And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
Attention, roll call.
That's right, everybody. Good morning. It's Friday. You know it, 8:05 live Eastern time. Of course, it's dark outside for me, 5:05 Pacific. It's a little cold out, but I guess we're going to get all warm together. Here we go. We're going to have a roundtable for you. We've got a great episode. I just want to reflect on yesterday's show. I hope, I see all our friends and listeners. I'm pretty sure everyone was present. I'm not sure about Hassan. I didn't see you yesterday, but for the majority, I think it was a great show. If you saw it, fantastic interview with Vernon Geberth, godfather of homicide. I think it was a hell of an interview. Impressive record. He was super humble, super cool guy. If you didn't have a chance to watch it, please, it's recorded. Check it out when you get a chance. John, what are your thoughts, brother?
Good times, baby. New day, he's not stepping down, he's stepping up. Eric Adams gave a fiery speech yesterday. Real defiant speech. I heard one of the pastors at the, I think it was the faith breakfast or the interfaith breakfast that they held, saying that he wants 4 more years. I'm with him. 4 more years, Adams. Let's go. Keep the content rolling in. Keep the memes rolling in. So what are your thoughts about that? Did you get the chance to hear Adam's speech before we go on the?
Well, I think at this point, watching him talk, I said, wow, he went from narcissist to manic depressive. I mean, he's out of he's out of control. Is at the point of like, wow, we're dealing with a mental patient. This is insane. Forget everything I said that like things are starting to make sense, that this potential ploy of medical condition could put him out and stepping down by not saying I step down. There's clearly some medical condition going on, but it's mental. He's out of control. This is someone that's completely unstable. But you know what? For the finest Unfiltered, our friends and listeners, I'll take 8 more years if it was possible. Maybe we could get him to buy another term like Blueberry, but he sounds insane. Brother, that was the craziest speech I've ever heard. What do you think about that speech? I
loved it. I thought it was hysterical. I was going to break it down yesterday, but I had a split and headache. I actually still have a headache. I feel like crap, but I listened to a little bit of it. I was cracking up. I was like, so funny. And I think Scooch sent me something, and he's like, it was like stages of denial. I was like, first stage was like Adams, like he's denying.
Yeah, he said that.
Everything's fine. So listen, we're gonna talk about state of the NYPD. Obviously, Jessica Tisch had an all-in yesterday at Cipriani's where she brought everybody in. She went over a bunch of things. Adams was in attendance. I don't know, man. I think we'll bring it up. We got Marlon Bethel's going to join us. Sal Greco is going to join us, and we're just going to do a little Friday roundtable, have a little fun, shoot a little shit, talk about what she's going to talk about, what she talked about, and I don't know. The whole thing, New York City is a disaster, bro. Disaster.
I'm just going to sum it up in 2 seconds, though. I can tell you right now, I hated it. I hated that state of the NYPD speech. Any friend and listener of the podcast right now, if you're active or retired and you're in the game and you know real police work and you understand the NYPD, you said, wow, I just listened to about 30 minutes of trash. And I said, at this point, if you want the real story, watch The Finest Unfiltered. You want a bedtime story? Watch The State of the NYPD. That was a bedtime story. That was. And the NYPD. And then she's all excited. And 5 minutes later, it was like she was telling a bedtime story. I was waiting for my kids. I wanted to tuck my kids in and give them the State of the NYPD because I would have put my kids to bed. And yippee! In 5 minutes, they got them. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, and we're coming up with amazing inventions. John, you ever heard of intrusive police work, broken windows? You ever heard of what was that called when we used to have those guys working for us? Conditions, crime. Yeah, I remember. You know what? We're going to have a watch party. We'll go over it. But I can tell you right now, in one sentence, that was complete trash.
It was anybody that knows anything about police work or the PD. They all know. Eddie West submitting a 28 on Friday? Nah, denied. Sorry, bro. We need all the manpower.
He's got to be on. Put him on the subway.
We need you for transit post, bro. What do you think? Good morning, John and Eric. Happy Friday. Submitting my 28 to the desk, coffee and cigars. Take Excedrin for that headache, brothers. Works like a charm. Cool seeing you guys on Dominic Izzo's podcast. Hope you have him on soon. Yeah, Dom Izzo. Yeah, he's a good dude, Dom. He's been out. I think before us, he was out on social media. Really pounding the pavement. He's got a lot of takes that I don't agree with. I'll be honest with you, but I appreciate the conversation. I think it raises the conversation, and it's good. So I was happy Sal was on there the other day, Dom Izzo show. I think Dom Izzo was on Sal's show. Good stuff. We got our brother Marlon Bethel. He's gonna come up. So let's get his take before we bring up Sal and before we get into the state of the NYPD. Marlon, what's up, brother? Yeah, live on air, dude. You see us?
Marlon, you got that mic going?
Nah, he's got no mic. All right, Marlon loves the state of the NYPD. He said he's Jessica Tisch's biggest fan. What else? What? Keep going.
You know what's funny?
All right, text me.
But you know what's funny, John? So before we went live, about a minute before we went live, we were just complimenting Marlon, saying he's the brains of the operation.
I didn't say he was good at production. I said, when it comes to the clips,
My Starlink is doing better than Marlon. So
morning, fellas.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. We can hear you now. Yeah. So
we just heard what you said about Jessica Tisch. We know you love her.
Yeah. Show us your T-shirt, your Jessica Tisch T-shirt. So, Marlon, what'd you think about the State of the Union, real quick, before we even get into it?
Well, I think it's funny. We have like an entire bureau of like academics and analysts and people with Ivy League degrees, and the best they could do is dig up Ray Kelly's leftovers, which is hilarious. It's like
you sound like you're in a tin can, bro.
Huh?
You sound like you're in a tin can, bro. What's up with your audio?
How about this? How about now?
Yeah, way better, dude. Way better.
Way better. Okay.
I
was saying
a phone sex operator.
But... yeah, I have a lot to say about this. I think the entire thing is it's like a retread of the Kelly era, and it's like we've learned nothing from what's happened then, with impact zones and the entire I mentioned in the tweet that a lot of the reforms that Bratton brought were kind of like a counterpoint to what Kelly did with impact, rather the excesses of impact, So to see this happen now is kind of like it's like deja vu all over again. So, but we'll get into that as I guess we go further in.
Marlon, I say it's the same horse in different color. And this speech, to me, it was like, you take a shiny, like really nice looking car, maybe someone put a nice paint job on it. But really, if you start to chip away at the paint, there's a hoopty underneath, They just covered up a hoopty and made it look real shiny and sold this idea that we're giving you all this new stuff that we already had. We already had intrusive police work. We already had broken windows. We already had conditions in anti-crime teams. It was working, right? Impact zones. I think it's there's a great argument there. I think impact zones have a necessity, and I talk about this as far as shock and awe. For an extended period of time, eventually at a point, it puts us at odds with the community. We've seen that, right? With Stop, Question, Frisk. Stop, Question, Frisk, which is an awesome tool. But this whole thing, to me, it's the same horse in different color.
Yeah. Shout out to Chief Rob Lucash. He says, that was the state of the finest Unfiltered. Everything you talk about, they are making those changes. Car pursuits, broken windows, John and Eric, in facto, PCs, Marlon and Sal, first steps. Keep listening, Tish. We did speak about a lot about it, right? She talked about how car pursuits are down significantly since John Shell made chief of department, which is a drastic change from when he made chief of patrol and car pursuits rose over 600%. So I think I think there were a lot of things that we've spoken about over the last year that were presented at this. But I think when you really look at what's going on, as much as it is definitely following the advice of this, it's a lot of what Eric's saying. It's just a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's a lot of nonsense. It's a lot of nonsense in a diminished police department where absolutely nothing's being done to improve morale and to retain and recruit actually now experience. And again, the fact that myself and Marlon haven't been called, she basically said they're begging people to take the test, right? They're begging people to take the test. I'm hearing that they're calling people that failed the psych, the people that failed for whatever reason down the pipeline, if they failed because they didn't meet the physical standards or they failed because they didn't pass the psych, they're recalling them back in. So think about that. They're calling people that aren't qualified to come in. That's continuing and furthering in this DEI movement. And yet you have two experienced guys who understand policing, did absolutely nothing wrong, and they won't offer us our jobs back. I mean, that shows the biggest failure. And just pretend like nothing's going on. So before we bring it up, let's bring up Sal Greco. Let's get his thoughts on state of the NYPD, and then we'll bring up the video, and we'll start to do a little watch party on this state of the NYPD. So Sal, welcome to the stage, brother.
Hey, good morning. Sorry, I was a little bit late. I guess I got to hand in my 28. But
You got to put it for lost time, Sal.
You got to see these out. You got to see that.
All for like 10 minutes, right?
Put him on the TS.
You got transit post 13. All right, that's that.
Yeah, I'm on that foot post. I don't want that in the corner. No, I was watching that, and I can tell you this with the state of the NYPD, this whole quality of life unit thing is like Marlon had put up on his X. It's the impact zone. It's back to the days of, so instead of moving forwards, we're moving backwards. Okay. So what all I'm seeing here is the Ray Kelly, Bill Bratton style of policing. Now, you might say, okay, that works, but I'm saying we need to go forward, not backwards, because when Ray Kelly was in office, there's a lot of litigation that's been left over. And there's many New Yorkers that feel that they were harassed or whatever the case may be. And I think Ray Kelly today, if he ran for office, it would not be favorable. So I don't know why Jessica Tisch is going back to the old playbook, but I think it's probably because she was never a cop, nor does she know how to run anything. I mean, and I noticed the biggest thing about this when she was speaking, Eric, she sounds, it's just like you said, it sounds like it's storybook time and she's speaking to children. It really does.
You know what, Sal? I think the bottom line is what they're really doing is they're going back to a lot of this stuff that's already been in place, because a lot of, the reality is a lot of the Ray Kelly and Bill Bratton stuff does work. I believe there is a time for impact zones. I don't believe it should be extended for a 2-year period, but for shock and awe purposes. And then after that, as we remove the cops and put them where they need to be, we do intrusive police work. But what's interesting about this is Captain Eric Adams, who was completely against intrusive police work because it targets black men, disproportionately and unfairly, is now the mayor, also police commissioner, leading intrusive police work. So, everything Eric Adams said that he's against, he's now for. So it goes back to everything we've been saying. Who is Eric Adams? What is he for? What is he against? I don't know. All I heard from him was a complete speech from a mental patient. He's out of control. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's insane.
Yeah, no, but listen, it's definitely a return to broken windows without a doubt. And I agree with you, Sal. There were a lot of issues with broken windows, but there were things that could have been improved. You know what I mean? And there were things that were improving. I mean, as the generations, you know what I mean? I think like I said, I think that we were amongst the best generation of policing that had ever been in the NYPD. And I think we still were making mistakes and we were improving on that. And a lot of the stuff that happened, really the bad things that happened, were a result of weak, poor leadership and political pressure. Right? We want to keep crime all the way down to the floor when crime was non-existent. I want to show another crime reduction. It's like, so they put pressure on cops to do things that they shouldn't have been doing, make stops they shouldn't have stopped, to write summonses they shouldn't have wrote. And I agree with you. When we look at the return to this, it's like, well, how is it being implemented? I have a big concern with that, because you've lost the guys that actually are nuanced in how to do this type of work, and the people that have been running around the last couple of years and doing intrusive police work, as Eric would say, have really been doing a piss poor job of it. They actually threw broken windows out the window, and they're just literally overstepping their authority as it relates to the CRT teams, the handling of, how they're doing car stops, how they're stopping people, the vehicle pursuits. And it's clear as day when you look at how these cases and these arrests, because ultimately what do cops do, right? Cops go there, they make arrests, and then you build a case and you send bad guys that are bad to the public, that are not providing, that are interfering in public safety. You see them through the criminal justice system. When you see a lot of these cases that have been made and a lot of these arrests that are still being made by the NYPD, they're being tossed, and a lot of it is warranted. It's because there were bad stops, there were bad arrests. And that's the thing that we need to hone in on. It's like, well, are we doubling down on that, or are we going to improve that? Like, what are we doing?
I think VSS Ventura says it exactly. Basically what you're saying wraps it up right here. Broken windows can't work with the restrictions in place. So with that, I would say broken windows is the AKA for intrusive police work, because that's really what it is. Intrusive police work falls on the people versus the poor. Most of the police work falls under that Supreme Court case. It's exactly that. You encounter the public at different levels of intrusion based on that Supreme Court case, right? So ultimately, with the weight of the Civilian Complaint Review Board, the pressure from the legislation, the lack of correlation and collaboration with the district attorney's office, this is only going to destroy and further deteriorate careers. And right now, the problem that I see, and we've seen it before, it's going to be the commanding officers. To me, they're the median when it comes to intrusive police work, because they're taking the information from their higher ups, from the upper echelon, to put this immense pressure now to curb crime, while at the same time Jessica Tisch is gaslighting the public, selling this lie. Let's just call it that. Selling this lie that crime is down in all different categories, and we'll get to that once we watch the state of the NYPD here. But it's just completely gaslighting. So it's really the commanding officers who are the median that put this immense pressure to get stars on their shoulder while they're going to deteriorate cops' careers. So for the cops that are out there right now, if you're active, you're on patrol, you have aspirations eventually get to one of these units, or you want to become a detective, if you're not part of this nepotism circle, if you go out there and you do intrusive police work just as I did, you will far surpass me as the most complaint cop. And that 58, that state is there forever. There's no clean slate for you. There's no clean slate. If you're a felon, you got a better opportunity if you're a felon to have a clean slate. But if you're Eric Dim, you're the most complaint cop, you're going to surpass me. There's no doubt about it. Especially right now, it's not about right and wrong. It's about optics. And the weight of the Civilian Complaint Review Board that has not been addressed. We're going to put these cops out there right now to do intrusive police work with immense pressure from these commanders. And I say they're the median when it comes to this. And these cops are going to destroy their careers. Marlon, what are your thoughts?
Wait, listen, before we go around again, let's start to play this video. We got about 40 minutes, and we'll break it up, and then we'll just go around one by one on each segment.
That works. Let's do it.
We got a lot. So let's go. Let's listen a little bit what Jessica Tisch had to say yesterday.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Oswa, for that introduction and for everything that you do with the New York City Police Foundation. Along with President and CEO Susan Birnbaum, Executive Director Greg Roberts, and the Foundation's board, trustees, staff, and supporters, you are the NYPD's most essential partner, and our work together has never been more important. From Crime Stoppers to the Options Program, precinct enhancements, equipment upgrades, and so much more, the Police Foundation has been there for our department, and for the people of our city for more than 50 years. We simply could not do this work without your support. One powerful example of this is our International and Domestic Liaisons program. The NYPD has the greatest intelligence and counterterror operations and personnel in the world, which have thwarted several attacks and saved countless lives. But as vigilant as we are, terror plots against our city have more than doubled in the past decade. We will always stand united to keep New Yorkers safe from these threats, and the Foundation's help here is critical. On behalf of the entire New York City Police Department, thank you. We are privileged today to be joined by the Mayor of New York City, the Honorable Eric Adams. I often tell people how we can complete each other's sentences on policing and sanitation policy. By the way, sir, rat complaints so far this year are down 23%. I have truly found a kindred spirit in this work, and I thank you, sir, for the trust that you have placed in me. But more importantly, thank you for the trust you have placed in the brave women and men of the NYPD. When people called to defund the police, you defended them. And when you needed to make the tough but necessary policy changes to make our city safer, you did so, and have faith that New York's finest would deliver.
All right, I want to stop it there. So, Marlon, what do you think about what she said? And let's go around about that. She said that Eric Adams didn't want to defund the police. He said that Eric Adams defended and put in policies to protect the men and women in the NYPD.
Yeah, it's quite the opposite, you know. This is more of them trying to basically rewrite history. And what I find like funny is that like Adams himself has been doing that in the last couple months, especially now that Trump is president. We see him trying to basically rewrite history, try to have us forget that he said he was the Biden of Brooklyn. Now here she is trying to rewrite history. Adams in many of those same reforms that kind of have made policing very hard in the city, you know. And the problem for Adams himself now is that he is a lot of the problems he's facing with the police department are the problems he created as borough president Eric Adams, or a lot of the reforms that he pushed as state senator Eric Adams, you know. But again, you know what, when Jessica Tisch became police commissioner, we thought that because her family had so much wealth and prominence in the city that she would be able to exert a bit of autonomy from Adams and be able to stand up to him. I think we're seeing every day that it's quite the opposite, and that she's the one, she's taking orders from him, and that she's not really in control of the police department, you know.
Sal, what do you think, brother?
On the first couple of minutes, she addressed the police foundation head. Maybe that guy should be sitting at Kaz Daughtry's table, since Kaz Daughtry has a credit card to the police foundation that's never been addressed. We don't know why that is. So that was kind of odd. But, you know, she does mention in passing, oh, Eric Adams, he's done a great job and he loves us in the police department. Where, you know, other than him letting his buddies act like a bunch of thugs with badges, what I mean is, you know, extorting nightclubs and committing all these crimes that they've been under investigation, what has he really done? Because the rank and file, the members of the police department that work every day in the street, they're not going to sit there and throw pom-poms for this guy. I can tell you, I know for a fact they dislike the mayor, and they feel that the morale is in the toilet. And that's Eric Adams. That's his whole mantra. You know, he wants to look good, but it's like he doesn't care about anyone else, especially that poor cop that's going to be in that foot post now with these Q zones. He doesn't care about them because it's all about him and his perception management. So, and I know she's going to say that later on when she's speaking. So, it's like Marlon just said. You sit there and praise this guy. Meanwhile, she's arguing with him, by the way, behind the scenes, because John Schell, Kaz Daughtry, and Tiny Kinsella are still there. So, you know, it's like I'm watching this going, who's this puppet up there, really? And she does sound like she's reading a bedtime story, like Eric said.
Eric, what do you think, brother?
I think that this speech has numerous layers to it, right? So the first thing when I look at this speech, I think that it's brilliant when it comes to deflection. She's taking a page right out of Eric Adams' book. So to me, what's indicative about this speech, I'm confident. I don't have the knowledge behind it, but I'm confident that Eric Adams himself and his people behind it have a lot to do with her speech and are helping her prepare this speech. The speech is brilliant. Starts out talking about the police foundation, right? When we talk about the police foundation, praising the foundation, there's a lot of questions when it comes to the foundation. Marlon, you brought it up. You and I speak about it all the time. There's a lot of rumors, and there's a lot of appearance that the police foundation has a lot of unaccounted for funds. Here's Patrick Donahue just says it here. Police foundation, unaccounted for slush fund for the privileged few. Absolutely. We've heard, Marlon and I talked about this several times. We all talk about this. So we heard a rumor that there's some type of deal with Netflix and Kaz Daughtry and the Khaki Pants Unit that supposedly, if that deal is true, following the NYPD would cost $35 million. And who's funding that? So we have some questions. And you know what? We've all said it could be the police foundation. Second thing, it starts out in deflection by talking about terrorism, right? And of course, people right away, we all have a passion when it comes to terrorism, and we all have a soft spot. So to start out, when we talk about the state of the NYPD and terrorism, kind of gets people away from thinking about actual just crime in the streets. And then, of course, this is where I believe that Eric Adams and his people are helping her and writing the speech. There's a big portion to address and praise Eric Adams. She has to take the time out to praise Eric Adams. And I think it's ironic that we call him honorable. And it's interesting. You know what honorable is? Honorable is someone that shows good moral character through honesty. So I find it ironic through the layers. I think this is a lot of complete deflection. And again, I'll say it, this is just a bedtime story.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think, this is more just perception management. This is, don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe your lying eyes. We're going to tell you what this is. And when you look at what Jessica Tisch was saying here, I've put up videos of Eric Adams where he shows that he does support the defund the police movement. Like Marlon said, nearly every, not nearly every policy, every single policy that has affected the men and women in the NYPD's ability to properly police the streets in New York City, Eric Adams supported. Every single one of them. So it's laughable when we go down to, when we look at the protest settlement agreement, when we look at bail reform, when we look at discovery reform, when we look at the open border situation, when we look at the NYPD's inability to work with ICE, literally any topic you want to talk about that has affected policing nationally and locally, Eric Adams has supported. So I think, right then and there, this is a great speech for people that don't know any better. If you don't know the backstory, if you haven't been paying attention, this is a great speech to hook people with low information. But, when I heard this, I'm like, this is garbage. This is complete garbage. This is just, I'm like, she's literally kissing this guy's ass and not telling exactly what's happening. And I agree, Marlon. I had hopes that because she wasn't there for the almighty dollar, that she wouldn't be beholden to Eric Adams. But clearly, she's beholden to pushing this perception management. Everything's fine. The NYPD is doing great. Everything's great. The mayor supported cops. The mayor had nothing to do with any of the stuff that's been going on. Meanwhile, he was the poster child for the Democratic Party and all of their failed policies. And that is irrefutable. I got the receipts. So that's it. So, all right, let's go a little further to what she's talking about.
And of course, Governor Kathy Hochul is here this morning. Governor, you have been a tremendous partner and ally, and it is an absolute honor to have you here with us. This room is full of people who care deeply about the safety and the security of New York City. And your investments in that safety are personal, because our city's future is your future too. I get it. New York City is my home, it's where I grew up, and like many of you, it's where I'm raising my own family. My appointment as police commissioner is not only the honor of my life, it is the greatest responsibility of my lifetime, because I know exactly what's at stake. And I want for my 2 young boys what we all want: a safe city free from fear of crime, violence, and disorder. That's the noble mission of this department, and nobody does this work better than your NYPD officers and civilians. They are consistently setting the standard and leading the way. Case in point, when United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was tragically murdered on the streets of Midtown last month, the eyes of the world were again on the New York City Police Department. For 5 days, NYPD investigators, led by the Midtown North Precinct Detective Squad, combed through thousands of hours of video, followed up on hundreds of tips, and processed every bit of forensic evidence, including DNA, fingerprints, IP addresses, and so much more. We deployed drones, canine units, scuba divers. We leveraged the domain awareness system, our Argus cameras, and conducted aviation canvasses. And our detectives went door to door, interviewing potential witnesses and doing that good old-fashioned police work that our investigators are famous for. On the Monday morning that Luigi Mangione was apprehended, I was in my executive conference room getting my daily brief from our police chiefs. Joe Kenny, our great chief of detectives, was updating me that the forensic evidence had come back from the police lab, and unfortunately, neither the fingerprints nor the DNA evidence on the water bottle or the kind bar had produced any matches in either our local or our national law enforcement databases. This was discouraging news, to say the very least. I slumped down in my chair and I said, "All right, Chief, so what's next?" Chief Kenny expressed full optimism that the perp would be apprehended and started walking me through his next planned investigative steps, while also noting that separate and apart from that work, anyone at any time, anywhere in the country, could recognize the person from the photo that we had put out. Despondent, I said to him, "All right, Chief, so what you're telling me is we could get this guy 6 months from now or 5 minutes from now?" He answered me straight, "That's right, boss." Exactly 5 minutes later, as we are going through the various leads that our detective bureau was tracking, Deputy Commissioner Kaz Daughtry's phone rings. It's the operations division. He speaks for about 20 seconds and looks up at us and said, "We got him." "We did?" "Yes, Commissioner. Operations just got a call from the Altoona, Pennsylvania Police Department. They have our person of interest in custody." "They do?" I looked at Chief Kenny. "Chief, is this right? Do they have him? And who the heck is he? And where the hell is Altoona, Pennsylvania?" Chief Kenny, again, totally flat and dispassionately says, "Boss, give me 5 minutes." And he goes down to his office. When he reemerges, he has an uncharacteristic smile on his face. "Boss, they got him. Person of interest has the ID that matches the one they used at the hostel, the same gun, the same silencer, the same clothing." Whippy! I did what any police commissioner would do in that moment, and I hugged every person in that room. And today, it is my great pleasure to introduce all of you to some of the members of the team who made it happen. First, Lieutenant Frank Gandiosi and Detective James Curcio, who masterfully led this case for the NYPD. These guys didn't go home to their families and barely slept for 5 And also here today, from the Altoona, Pennsylvania Police Department, we have Patrolman Joseph Detweiler and Tyler Fry, who responded to that McDonald's and took an armed Luigi Mangione into custody. Patrolman, on behalf of the dozens of detectives who worked this case, I am proud today to designate both of you as honorary detectives in the New York City Police Department. Congratulations. would also like to acknowledge Altoona Police Chief Joseph Merrill and Deputy Chief Derek Swope, who are here with us this morning. Thank you all so much for being here.
All right. So what's missing here, Marlon?
Yippee! Woohoo!
What do you think, Marlon? What do you got, guy?
Yeah, this is like Eric just mentioned. This is again them. I like how they include this here. So you're distracted, and the media won't ask tough questions here. See this. So before we continue, let me add some context to this, right? So the Police Foundation, where Tish is giving the speech, is an organization started in the 1970s by all the powerful uh, real estate owners in Manhattan, who are also part of another organization called the ABNY, which is the Association for a Better New York. Basically, as I've noted many times before, New York City is run by real estate, and that's largely because there's so much money that comes in from like the world to buying Manhattan real estate, and that there's so much money that flows in, and there's so much tax revenue that comes out of commercial property taxes, especially, that it gives these guys an outsized influence on government. But anyway, the Police Foundation was started in the 1970s after the city was nearly bankrupt, and it was pushed by the ABNY because they kind of were started. They were started a couple of years before that because they wanted to stop the hemorrhaging of businesses and residents from New York City during, this is in the bleak times of the early 1970s, when the city was going broke. So the reason why I'm noting this is because most of the audience there are rich elites who have no clue about policing, right? They have no understanding about the intricacies of policing. They're many of them are detached from the blue collar lifestyles of the majority of people in New York City. So the speech that Tish is giving now, it first of all, a lot of these people won't understand. They don't have they won't have the understanding to ask complicated questions and to dig deeper into what she's saying. But in addition to that, by presenting these guys here, by giving them an award here, and by talking about terrorism and incidents which have galvanized the public, it's another way of glossing over the problems in her speech and the problems with the city, and it's another way of distracting those same people and the media who are seated in the audience, and prevent them from digging deeper and asking tougher questions of this day during this event. So, like Eric said before, I think this is the fact that they brought the cops up, the cops who were involved in the Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt on Trump, is more distraction, and it's meant to keep you from asking, from looking deeper into her speech and looking deeper into the policies that she's proposing, because again, the Butler, Pennsylvania incident galvanized the public, and it's like post 9/11, right? Post 9/11, not a lot of us were asking tough questions of government, and that was because 9/11 was a tragedy, and it was also a galvanizing event that kind of united the public. So it united us in patriotism, and we're seeing them use that same kind of tactic over here in presenting the award to those cops.
Sal, what do you think, brother?
I find it, ironic how, they took up a bunch of time honoring cops that aren't even in the NYPD. She's not even telling the story straight. If you want me to sit there and believe, she's just sitting there. What'd she say? Golly, whatever she said. No one answers to her. I don't know if she doesn't realize this. They were happy. See, Kaz Daughtry got the call. It's Kaz Daughtry that was trying to take that spotlight because he's the real police commissioner. And in fact, didn't he run to Pennsylvania and there was a whole big thing about him being there. That's all right. He uses the police foundation's credit card. So, but that whole thing, and then she honored them. You know, it was a civilian from McDonald's that made that phone call. Nobody could find this guy until a civilian called, and they're still waiting for their reward, by the way. It's a feel-good story designed to play with your emotions, because that's the Eric Adams mantra. He wants to play with your emotions so you forget about reality for a second, because what you really want to pay attention to is what she's setting you up for, which would be the next part of the speech when you start hearing about what they want to implement. This is just a way to distract you, and you'll remember, oh yeah, they gave those guys a reward. Oh, but the civilian I called, that they didn't do anything. By the way, she keeps mentioning Chief Kenny. Chief Kenny is in a lawsuit with, I believe, a lieutenant. I think the lieutenant, his name is Ramirez. That's that infamous electric zoo. You remember the detectives that were allegedly, they were drinking on the job and all that, and they tried to hang the lieutenant? Yeah, that was Chief Kenny is in that lawsuit. So he's another guy with corruption surrounding him that we're supposed to say, oh, don't worry about it. I guess he's part of Emerald Society. He's untouchable, much like John Schell. So, again, all the real issues, they never want to address. They just want to point you in one direction and keep you bottlenecked in one state. It's almost like a comatose state. Oh, look, yeah, look, oh, those Altoona people, yeah. I mean, that's what they want you to look at instead of questioning what she's about to talk about and what they're about to implement.
Well, I tell you what, I want to call her over, because I was never good at putting my kids to bed by reading them bedtime stories, but I want her to put my kids to bed, because this is exactly what's happening on. We all agree. We collectively agree. Marlon, John, Sal, and myself, we agree that this is just complete deflection and diverting your attention from what's really going on, right? Because the state of the NYPD address is about crime in the streets and public safety. So what she did is brilliant. I watched her speech several times for that reason. What she says in the beginning of the speech and at the end of the speech is all deflection of actually what's in the middle, what's actually sandwiched in the middle. And this is like when you put your kids to bed, your kid's laying there, you're telling the story, you start rubbing their head, their hair's going back, and their eyes start closing, and eventually they pass out on the meat of the story. That's what's going on here. People listen to the story. She's got you listening. Now they're starting to fall asleep. And when they start to zone out and they're not paying attention is when she's going to talk about what's really going on in the city. But if you listen to what she says, and we'll get into it, there comes the gaslighting, right? The gaslighting and the pandering to her boss, Eric Adams, playing the game that Eric Adams wants to play. So when Marlon says that they've galvanized this speech, that's exactly what they do. They provide a protective layer from what's really going on. That's why I say her speech is brilliant. It's strategically prepared and strategically done to hook you in to be deflected of what's really going on, right? We all have a compassion for terrorism. And then she starts talking about the Luigi Mangione case. Now, don't get me wrong. It's great they apprehended Luigi Mangione, the alleged killer in just a heinous crime for taking the life of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare. But that's one of many cases. And if anything, it's not the most substantial case in the NYPD, probably not even that year, because the NYPD goes out and does fantastic jobs. That was good old-fashioned police work. And that particular perpetrator, Luigi Mangione, was actually apprehended by civilians at McDonald's. You know what? If anything, if there's any cops should that get the most praise, it should be those two Altoona cops who were on patrol and had the presence of mind to take that call seriously, because I'm sure there's plenty of cops that wouldn't take that call seriously. Hey, this particular perpetrator is at McDonald's. But this was a complete bedtime story and romanticized this story to get you so hooked in that you're not paying attention to anything else, because there's a lot of good police work that goes on. And you know what? It's kind of an insult to other homicide victims throughout the city that do not get this much attention, to divert so much attention to this. Of course, and I agree with Marlon, because she's speaking to the elites. She's a billionaire heiress. She's not speaking to the average New Yorker. She's speaking to the elites. And the elites want to hear about the case of Luigi Mangione. They don't want to hear about the cases in the ghetto. They don't want to hear about the real cases in the hood. They want to hear about this case that romanticizes. And right now we have the complete deflection. Everyone's falling asleep till we get to the meat of the story of really what's going on, the state of the NYPD, what's going on in the streets of New York City. This is complete trash. This is garbage. So again, that's why I agree. Marlon, Sal, and John, this is deflecting and diverting our attention from what's really going on. And then people will not catch the fact that she's gaslighting the public. And we'll go further into it. And you go with here, lie after lie after lie. So Jessica Tisch, if you were honorable and you had a moral character, you lost it on this speech because you completely lied to the public.
If I could do a quick follow-up, John?
Sure.
Yeah. If you ever watch whenever the president speaks at the State of the Union address, it doesn't matter which party he's from, but whenever the president brings up certain patriotic things, no matter who you are in the audience, you're going to clap, right? Because the majority of people love their country, right? The reason why I'm stating that is because 9/11, when Obama was president, and he would have his State of the Union addresses, even though Republicans hated him, and you know how politics go, right? Everyone would clap when Obama starts mentioning what the heroic things that were done by first responders on 9/11 and the heroism of our armed forces in Afghanistan and Iraq after, right? So the point here is that when you bring up certain incidents that kind of united the public, it kind of causes the audience to kind of gloss over the intricacies of what you're saying. Okay, because again, nobody, you know, when everyone feels united, nobody really wants to be that guy who may add something to the conversation that people might think is negative and might kind of like ruin the mood of the people around them, you know.
I just want to add this in. You're absolutely right, Marlon. What they do is they romanticize the situation. That's what I was saying. What they did was they romanticized this situation of Louis Mangione and propelled it so much, right? So that people come together. It's exactly that. So no one wants to speak outside the group. No one wants to speak outside the group and say, hey, what about the real issues that she's just addressed when we get into it, when we talk about crime? Oh, no, but that takes away from terrorism, keeping us all together, protecting our country. That keeps away from, protecting our city. This Louis Mangione, we got to get him, right? Because he's the number one most wanted person in New York City. Just complete romanticize the situation. Exactly that, Mom. I'm with you, brother.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was a complete joke to sit here and laud the NYPD for the work they did. It's like we spent all this money. She talks about the useless drones that they use, how it did absolutely nothing. She talks about all the money that was spent, the millions and millions of dollars that was spent. There were two pivotal things that happened that the NYPD did correctly. One, the first thing that they did was release that photo to the public. First, they got the photo. Secondly, they decided to release. Everything other than that was a complete, utter debacle, including the fact that the San Francisco Police Department reached out, let people know that they believed that Luigi Mangione was the murderer, and we didn't do anything about it, and then no one told the police commissioner or anything like that. So to sit here and talk about that, the people that should have been on the stage were the people that phoned in at the McDonald's in Altoona, PA, along with those police officers that responded, because they didn't shit can the job. They took it properly. They investigated properly. They made the arrest. This was not an NYPD success story at all, but that's what they spun it into here. So absolute deflection, absolute patting the NYPD on the back for something that really the only thing that they had to do with was what they should have done was investigate, get that photo, release it to the public, because it was a nationwide and actually a worldwide search at that point. And they're trying to make it like it was the hard work of the New York City Police Department that ultimately led to the apprehension. And there's a lot of things that happened as a result of the New York City Police Department that led to that apprehension happening much later. And thankfully, there were no other lives taken as a result of the inept actions by the NYPD. Let's go further in this video.
But the NYPD's work isn't just about the flashy, famous cases. It's about the everyday investigations and radio runs that keep our city safe, and our officers are out there making a real difference. Overall index crime was down in 2024, with more than 3,600 fewer major crimes reported than the year before. Murders were at a 5-year low. Both shooting incidents and shooting victims were down for the 3rd straight year, including the lowest number of shootings in Brooklyn since CompStat began recording them in the early 1990s. Major crime was down in housing, and it was down in our transit system for the 2nd straight year. That's good news, but something bigger is happening right now. I am proud to announce that over the past 2 months, index crime in New York City is down a whopping 16%. 16% in December and 17% in January. This includes year-to-date declines in every borough of the city and double-digit reductions in 4 of the 7 major crime categories, including murder, robbery, grand larceny, and auto theft. Shooting incidents are down more than 28% year-to-date, and we set a record last week by going 5 days without a single shooting victim, the first time that has happened since the 1990s. For the month, we are on pace to have the fewest shootings of any January in the CompStat era. Why? What explains this? There's one strategy that is game-changing and is showing real potential to extend the transformation of policing that began in the CompStat era of the early 1990s. Then, the department thought about crime at the precinct level. But the average precinct in New York City is quite large, extending 4 square miles, and each precinct varies widely in size and population and land use. So the traditional precinct-based model doesn't always allow for the most precise analysis. As you all know, I have a tech background and a data background. I knew coming into this job that our data has become more detailed and defined over the years, and our analytic tools have gotten more sophisticated. We certainly can dig so much deeper into the numbers and be so much more precise. So now we're focusing on much smaller geographical areas than precincts, specific street segments, portions of neighborhoods, sometimes stretches of several blocks that cross precinct borders where we see spikes in crime. We call them zones, and zone-based policing is a hyper-local, data-driven policing model. We know that the presence of police drives down crime and disorder, and the idea behind zone-based policing is quite literally to flood the zone. In a world with limited resources, you can't flood the zone across a 4 square mile precinct, and you don't need to, but you can do that across 10 problematic blocks. These zones are being identified by an algorithm that analyzes crimes and defines clusters of violence and disorder. It shows us exactly where our cops need to be and the conditions they need to address there. And I want to be clear, this is not about targeting individuals. It is about effective, efficient officer deployments. It is a focused, location-based, scalpel approach to crime. It is emphatically the 2025 modernization of the classic cops on the dot strategy that fueled so much crime-fighting success over the past 3 decades. And how appropriate it is to take this next step in the CompStat revolution on the heels of its 30th anniversary. The zone model allows us to be quite nimble too, through the use of mobile field forces, groups of officers that can be deployed to any part of the city at any time. Right now, about 650 additional officers per day who had previously been working desk jobs are assigned to high crime zones across the 5 boroughs, driving a big part of the crime reductions that we are seeing right now. For example, over the last 5 weeks of the year, major crime in our holiday zones went down by a staggering 37%. And our Roosevelt Avenue zone has seen a 31% crime decrease over the past 2 months. That's the plan for above ground. But what about below ground? The subways will always be a bellwether for public safety in New York City. And while we have seen...
All right, let's stop there. So she's introducing crime zones as this revolutionary 2025 policing. Yeah, I don't know. Marlon, what do you think about crime zones? What do you know about crime zones? How long have you known about crime zones? How long has the NYPD looked at crime zones? Is this a 2025 technological model? Is this a data driven analyst that we didn't have in the past? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember working crime zones when I got out of the academy back in 07, you know. and funny enough, we did that without AI. So what exactly is the AI doing now that a human can't do? But again, this is a retread, you know. This is like, yeah, this something else is happening in society right now where every corporation is adding AI onto everything, and all of a sudden it's supposed to be this magical new product, you know, because it has AI slapped on the end of it, and the AI doesn't really do anything, you know. This is marketing. All this is marketing. They've now added AI onto Ray Kelly's his impact zones from mid 2000s, you know. Why my question is who's getting this contract for the AI involved, and why exactly we need an AI now when we didn't back then, you know. What is the AI adding that's making a difference, you know. When I was in the FIO's office, we would we just pull up a map of all the shootings and all the burglaries, and we know something's going on in this area. Okay, so we're gonna go talk to people in this area. We're gonna go target this area and see if we can get something out of it. You know, why exactly? What's the AI doing that the human can't do that? But there's something else that I said when Tish first got there, that she is being brought in to kind of obfuscate the hemorrhaging of personnel from the department, and is there to kind of replace them with AI. And what she's doing here is living up to exactly what I said she was going to do. And this I can't see how this is going to work, because at the end of the day, that AI isn't going to replace the cop on the ground who you need to put cuffs on people. The AI isn't going to jump out of the computer and go sit in a patrol car, or RMP as we call it in the NYPD, and going to go respond to 911 jobs. Okay, you still need cops. You still need people. The robots aren't there yet, and they're not coming for decades. Okay, so I can't see this being successful. You know, and I'll when it comes back to me, I'll mention some other aspect that she's kind of alluding to in the speech, and it's another reason why I don't think this is going to work.
Sal, what do you think, bro?
I see low information Juju is talking, and he mentioned something about don't listen to somebody peddling numbers or felon. He's talking about Sam Antar, but he has no problem with Jimmy Rodriguez, who's a self-admitted criminal mob associate. Then I saw he said something else there about me. I'll say listening to Roger Stone, friend. Well, all your buddies listen to Jimmy Rodriguez, so I don't know what you're getting at. That is low information, folks, and that's what is going on here. Jessica Tish wants to play with your emotions. Why? Because that works with low information people. They'll drag you around, and then you just, yeah, what a great job she's doing. All I'm hearing is Operation Impact, flooding the impact zone. I remember this because I came out of the academy. We were all forced to do this stuff. Everything would happen. Oh, this crime happened here. So they're saying in a 4-block radius, the crime is down. That's great. What about the overall precinct? What about the overall borough? What about overall period? You know, it's just the same old, it's like reinventing the wheel. What we're doing here is rearranging the furniture. And really, does that change anything in the room? No, it still has the dent in the wall. You know, it still has the cracked tile, but we're rearranging the furniture. And she wants you to believe she's doing something when what we're really doing is going back to the past. That's what we're doing. Operation Impact. And here it is. and she's saying, "Oh, look, it's a brand new thing, an AI or whatever it is." We don't know who, like Marlon said, those contracts with that, the drone contract. Trust me, they're all being looked at right now, and that's what I'm hearing the whole time. I'm hearing impact, Ray Kelly, impact, and that's all I'm hearing. And I saw one other thing on address. Patrick Donahue mentioned about Chief Kenny or something. Here's what I'm saying. The lawsuit, you should look it up. It's the lawsuit from a lieutenant that is suing the job. And I think Eric might know who the lieutenant is, but the lieutenant is suing because they were fingering him and blaming him for the actions of others. And it was Kenny who's involved in that cover-up of how that's handled. So what I'm trying to tell you is when you're up top, you're a chief or whatever your rank is, you need to be held accountable because everything flows from the top down. It doesn't work where a lieutenant sitting on the desk has more authority than somebody sitting at one police plaza that has stars or chevrons. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. You look up the lawsuit, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about with him.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank our friends and listeners right now. The chat is awesome. We're not reading out all the comments because we only have so much time and we got to go through this watch party here. But we're all on the same page. We agree that this is same horse, different color. We're tired of listening to nonsense. We're tired of being just completely distracted, tired of being gaslit. We're tired of this deflection. So I'll tell you this, though. John, we're going to have that book Crumbs. You know what? You came up with that great idea. I think it's awesome. But if this doesn't work out, I always get calls. I get calls all the time. What are you guys going to do when you run out of content? I usually say we'll never run out of content. But you know what? Let's rhetorically say, I run out of content. I'm opening up a used car dealership. And you know what, Michael Kemper? I got somebody to work with you because I want to hire Jessica Tisch. She could sell a car without tires, and she could tell you that car is going to run beautifully. It has new technology. It has an engine. I don't know if you ever heard of this, but the car has an engine. So that's exactly what they're doing right now. This is Crime 101. I was anti-crime. All of us did anti-crime. Sal, you were out there getting DWIs. John was doing anti-crime. Marlon, you were doing FIO investigations. And what do? We do zone policing. There's no difference. You take a specific location in a precinct and find out what the crime trend is there. What's the cluster? What's the spike? And we send the anti-crime in there to do narrow, zoned-in, focused policing. We send our conditions team narrow, zoned-in policing to where the quality of life conditions are in specific streets in a precinct. This is nothing new. This is CompStat 101. But this idea, let's sell them a brand new car. Let's sell them an old car and tell them it's amazing because it has an engine. This is the same horse in different color. Nothing has changed. But what is going on right now with this speech is exactly what we've been telling you. This is where we get into the middle of the sandwich, where this is really what's about. Now we start to get into the crime fighting plan, right? And the crime fighting plan is going back to what used to work and doing it again and pretending it's a new initiative and gaslighting you. And exactly that, what Marlon said earlier, speaking to the elites, right? Because they don't really understand policing, but it sounds great because it comes from Jessica Tisch. It comes from the billionaire heiress. It comes from the 43rd richest family in the country. That's where this information is coming from. But now we're getting to the actual meat and potatoes of what this is really about, the state of the NYPD. And you're being gaslit and lied to because Sam Antar, check him out on X, along with Reza Chaudhry, has put out the factual information, the numbers that correspond to the real crime that's going on, the fraudulent numbers that she's putting out right now. It's absolutely misinformation and complete deflection. And now, eventually, as we go further, we'll go into the mass exodus, and we're talking about what's actually going on, the state of NYPD, but sandwiched in because you already fell asleep as she romanticized you about terrorism and about the Louis Mangione case.
Yeah, absolutely. To hear her talk about the crime zones, it's like she discovered fire. And, to me, I've been working crime zones my entire career. That's exactly what I did, is break down in my precinct, which is why if you go back a few episodes back, I said that crime has to be dealt with at a precinct level, not at a borough level, not at a citywide level, which the CRT team does. It's at a citywide level. It's done. And then you got the CRT teams for the borough. It doesn't work. You need to go down to a precinct level into there and figure out where you're taking the crimes, who's committing the crimes. That's targeted police work. So she's presenting this as if she invented fire, the same way that Kaz Daughtry has presented drones as if he invented fire when NYPD was working with drones when he was still driving around Jeffrey Madry, making sure, ask for cash or on duty booty, whatever you want to call it. So, and it's a complete deflection. This is just more of the Eric Adams game. Remember when Eric Adams invented the garbage can? It was a trash revolution. This is exactly what Jessica Tish is saying here, is that these crime zones are a revolutionary idea. It's something that was happening in the police department before I even got on, before any of us got on, but it was something that we used consistently when we were an effective police department. So I'm happy to hear about the return to it. I'd like to know all the details about the return to it, because there's a lot of nuances in there that could affect how effective it actually would be. And are we going numbers for numbers, which they are doing in transit right now? And I'm going to say, yeah, we're going to do numbers for numbers. This is obviously, although she hasn't said it, this is an obvious return to broken windows policing. Will it be worse than what people in the communities complained about? Apparently, if a billionaire heiress is talking about the return to broken windows policing, it's much friendlier than anyone else. Let's go further into this video.
Crime reductions on our trains were not where we need to be. And we know that the frightening stories of violent crime in our subways resonate deeply with New Yorkers. So we went to work immediately. And today, I'm announcing a 3-part plan to address crime in our transit system. Part 1 is already well underway. 2 months ago, I re-examined our existing transit deployments and found that entirely too many cops were posted at subway entrances, mezzanines, and turnstiles. And not enough were on the trains and the platforms where 78% of transit crime actually occurs. I also looked at the crime numbers by subway station and found that our deployments of officers were not necessarily hitting all of the most problematic stations at the right times. So I directed the redeployment of more than 200 transit officers to daily dedicated subway patrols on the trains and station platforms that need them the most. These moves are already yielding results. So far in January, major crime in transit is down another 36% compared to last year and is 29% below pre-pandemic levels. But people still don't feel safe. So part 2 of the plan began in full this week, when hundreds of officers, many of whom were previously working desk jobs, were deployed into our subway system, enabling us to post 2 cops on every overnight train. Officers will move from one car to the next and address conditions as they encounter them. The idea behind this initiative, frankly, is not only to make our riders safer, but also to make them feel safer. These deployments were first announced by Governor Hochul, and we thank her deeply for her investment and partnership in a safer transit system. Now, part 3 of the plan goes straight to the sense of disorder in the subways and is centered on the enforcement of the transit system's rules. Over the past 10 years, these rules, such as the prohibitions against taking up multiple seats, laying outstretched, smoking, drinking alcohol, have not been consistently enforced, which increases the perception of an unsafe city and makes the rides unpleasant for everyone else on the train. That needs to change. And we've been piloting that change for about 2 weeks in a transit district in Queens. Beyond the feeling of disorder, this strategy is designed to address the surge of random acts of violence that we're seeing in the subways. Because the truth is, the overwhelming majority of people who commit these violent acts have a long history of unlawful conduct in the transit system. We want this message to be very clear. Our officers will not simply walk by someone who is violating the law and disrupting passengers. We are going to correct the condition. We will also match our enforcement with services when needed, because we know that we must deal with the worsening mental health crisis. Clearly, this is not just a New York issue, but that certainly doesn't excuse inaction. Our subway trains and platforms are not homeless shelters. They are not psychiatric hospitals. And as a city, we have a moral duty to provide services to people who need them. The NYPD needs strong partners in this, and we stand with the mayor and the governor in support of their legislative efforts to proactively address severe mental health in our subways and elsewhere. But in order to do this work with the level of care and attention that it requires, our officers need the necessary tools. So today, I'm also proud to announce that the department is expanding our crisis intervention training to include ICAT, integrating communications, assessment, and tactics. The NYPD responds to about 180,000 jobs involving a person in mental distress every year. And the goal is to teach our officers to better understand, identify, and de-escalate these high-stakes situations. Our first priority is to protect life, and to put it bluntly, our cops need better tactics. This enhanced training will give them that, and we're starting to roll it out this year, beginning with our newest recruit class. Our work must not only make people safe, but it must make them feel safe too. When neighborhoods are plagued by issues such as aggressive panhandling.
All right, let's talk about the subway, right? Let's get into that. Marlon, what are you thinking about what she's saying about returning to broken windows in the train station, and what her plan is around that?
Yeah, well, so I mentioned before that when it comes around to me again, I would note something that another reason why I think this entire thing is going to fail, and this relates to the subway too, because so one of the major tenets of the reforms of the the 2010s was about having cops familiar with their neighborhoods, right? It was basically like localization, right? They wanted cops, they wanted enough cops in precincts so that they would have time in between patrol to go and talk to a business owner, to go talk to residents of a community and get to know their community, be familiar with the conditions of their precinct, and just to basically this was a counterpoint to the problems of impact, which was that you had cops being moved into areas that they weren't familiar with. And if you remember that shooting that happened in the pink houses in the 7-5 with the rookie, I believe this was one of the counterpoints to that, because that particular rookie was they said he was unfamiliar with the neighborhood, so that kind of raised his anxiety, right? So in this case, in transit, we're having them push cops in there who aren't necessarily familiar with those transit lines, who aren't necessarily familiar with the neighborhood in general, that they're now going to be working. And I can't, just like the new zones, I can't see how this is going to work if cops aren't there for long enough to get to know their neighborhood, get to know the people that are in their neighborhood, get to know who the problems are in that community, and where the problems are coming from in those communities. You know, this and which now goes back to the excesses of Kelly's era, which was that you had higher ups in 1PP who were pushing for numbers, and you had rookies and young cops who weren't familiar with that neighborhood, so it kind of detached them from it, and this kind of pushed. This was how the numbers problems were able to balloon into the fuel that grew the BLM rights. The problem is you need precincts and commands to be properly staffed with cops, and you need them to be staffed with enough cops that they can actually take the time out to get where they're working and get to know the people that are in their neighborhood. regardless of whether it's transit, whether it's housing, whether it's a precinct, the cops need to know who's in their community. And once they do know their community, it fosters better relations, and it allows the department to do that whole precision policing that they've been talking about for the last decade now, which seems to be out the window because Tish herself says we're not targeting any individuals. Okay, which we spent the last decade talking about targeting people. So, well, that's out the window as well. So this is gonna fail. None of this is gonna work.
Sal, before you go, we got 1,000 people on here. Thanks everybody for joining this morning. We're talking about Jessica Tish's State of the NYPD speech that was given at Cipriani's yesterday, where she unveiled some new policies, supposedly new policies that the NYPD is going to implement. If you guys could just do us a favor, like, share, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you guys. Sal, what are your thoughts when it relates to what she's talking about in transit? You put out a post last week about what's actually happening in transit and the numbers for numbers. What are you thinking about what she has to say?
You know, she didn't address the numbers from numbers, and it's well known and well documented. In fact, somebody should actually full request arrest in transit and decline prosecutions in transit, and you'll see that giant number. This is something that was done a long time ago, and it had its detractions as far as this broken windows and how it's applied. You also have to remember, and I mentioned it on my show, I will mention on my show that what happens here is you're not looking at how things are being applied now versus, back in the day. Back then, you had prosecutors that would at least, I don't know, I wouldn't say they're friendlier, but they would prosecute certain crimes. These things are getting DP'd for a reason. You have the guy, what do they call it? The guy sitting on the benches. Transit has all kinds of rules, by the way, that don't exist, up top. So if you sit down on a bench and you extend your feet, or you take up 2 seats, they could come over to you, and that's either a summons, and then if you're a transit recidivist, they arrest you. These are things that were done already. There's no, they're just trying to reinvent the wheel. I don't see what this is. It's just playing with your emotions. If you go, and then, Eric Adams with his whole, she's not talking about him here, but he says that we have a mental health crisis in New York City, but you're locking up all the mental crises people in transit and then sending them in for a bogus arrest. If you don't believe me, go to Transit District 20, go to Transit District 32. Just stand outside with a camera. You'll see the homeless people leaving there constantly because they're all getting arrested for nonsense because that's the order from the top. So they've been trying to implement a form of broken windows, but this is what I'm saying. It's already like an abuse of it. If you're going to use broken windows to go pick on a homeless person that needs help and isn't doing anything for the purpose of, garnishing numbers, you've already failed. This is something that was being done in the past. That's what I'm saying. We need innovative ideas with new people that are currently on the job to move forward. We're not moving forward here. Well, it sounds like you're going backwards, and you're just appeasing the cronies that are informing Jessica Tish on what to do, because she still doesn't know what to do. Why? She hasn't suspended or modified any corrupt figure that's sitting right now at a desk at One Police Plaza that has a chevron or stars on their shoulders. So, again, and it's a lot of gaslighting with this stuff.
You nailed it, Sal. It's exactly what it is. It's more gaslighting. So I'm glad I'm still awake after listening to this bedtime story, because it's exactly what it is. Marlon and Sal, you guys gave a great perspective. We're talking about broken windows, intrusive police work, which I say all the time. Intrusive police work is the bedrock. It's the foundation for public safety. But what do we need to do intrusive police work? Because it's an art, it's a skill. We need a prepared police department. And the overwhelming majority, the rank and file, they have their hearts in the right place, but they have not been prepared, and they've not been trained to do broken windows and intrusive police work. So this idea that she's perpetuating, that she's giving out to the public, is complete gaslighting. Because what has she been telling the public constantly? She constantly tells you, and this is where the truth is, she tells you she's data-driven. She constantly says that. So that's exactly what I foresee happening in the subways, is that we're not necessarily going to have an impact and target the persons of interest, the correct subjects, that we're just going to target by numbers. Exactly that. Numbers for numbers, and they're going to try to drive down numbers in the subway, which ultimately may give it an impact in the short period, maybe a short-term solution, but just a Band-Aid as we impact and displace numbers. But we're not actually going to curb crime. It's not actually going to curb the crime that's going on here because we don't have a prepared police department that has been trained to do intrusive police work. Why? We have a mass exodus. We lost the veterans of the police department that actually were trained under broken windows, that were trained to do intrusive police work, that understand the perspective and Supreme Court cases, People versus DeBoer, and understand Terry versus Ohio. So we lost that. So to do this complete 180 right now could be an epic fail, because where's the support for the police officers right now with an overzealous civilian complaint review board that's comprised of those that are just have a complete bias and disdain for police work? So also, here comes the romantic, the sexiness in this speech, right? That people eat up. They love buzzwords. She goes right into, we need more when it comes to crisis intervention training in this ICAT. She's talking about, let me tell you right now, the NYPD does not need more training when it comes to emotionally disturbed persons, because the NYPD is the best in the business, because they deal with people all day. The volume, and everyone is an emotionally disturbed person at some point. They deal with people all day, different personalities, just even if it's a slow day and you're giving people directions, constantly interactions. There's plenty of training right now. So again, this is more window dressing, this idea that they need more training and to de-escalate. She used the buzzword, to de-escalate. The cops are not the problem when it comes to the mentally ill and homeless. The problem is the legislation. The problem is Eric Adams actually not saying what he's for or against, and actually supporting the cops to actually remove mentally ill people and actually bring them to where they need to be. But instead, they get suppressed by the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Because if you're in emergency services or you're a cop out there right now and you take someone involuntarily against their will, you will get substantiated and you will get charged for the Civilian Complaint Review Board. So we need to put things in place to actually support the cops before we give this whole sexy story or bedtime story, because that's where we're at.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing's a joke, dude. The whole thing. So I guess de-escalation's out the window. We're gonna call de-escalation some other nonsensical training. It's just reinventing the wheel, more of the same training. And when it relates to, you guys are talking about the homeless arrests. So I'm not saying that homeless should never be arrested. I'm saying that you have crime patterns down in transit. Are they resulting from the homeless population? If so, then I would say that, yes, we should go in and lock people up, identify who's committing those crimes, in order to identify who's committing those crime patterns and gather intelligence. If that's not happening in that transit platform, let's say there's robberies involving youth, 17 to 30, robbing women on the train, and they're not homeless, and we have video of them. Why are we going on the subway platform and just arresting homeless people that will ultimately be DP'd because we're arresting them for outstretch? The cops don't want any part of it. The bosses don't want any part of it. And this is not only is it a return to it's a return to the failed part of broken windows. Targeted police work works. The part where we target crimes that are happening and individuals who are engaged in that criminal activity, that's the part of broken windows we need to return to. But returning to the numbers-driven based game of broken windows is exactly what's happening here. And that's what's happening in transit. When you look at transit, like what Sal's been pointing out, those decline prosecutions. Yes, do we need partners in the DA's office, and were there problems? Yeah. But when you look at who's being arrested and what they're being arrested for and their priors, and they're not being linked to any other crime, nor are you keeping crime down in that transit platform. Because now not only are you going and arresting someone who for being homeless, for being poor, basically, you're removing a police officer who could be out there that day investigating and trying to take away crime patterns that are happening and trying to prevent other types of crime from happening. So it really is a double down on failure. It's it's we need some new brains. We need some new brains in the New York City Police Department. And what we're getting a return to the failures of these old men that are really the brains behind the police department now. And they're going back to things that, like Marlon said, divided police and communities. It's really disheartening to hear. And I ultimately don't think it'll have an effect on crime other than it will displace crime for a while. But why are we doing this in a diminished police department? And where is the governor and the mayor to come up with a plan to deal with the homelessness and the mentally ill? I mean, we have billions of dollars. We don't need that $77 million in overtime that Kathy Holtshill's given to not only remove people from desk jobs, but to move people from precincts down into the subway, because that's the thing they're not talking about. There were sergeants and lieutenants that were in precincts that were effective in their commands that were moved down into that subway station. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. The mayor and the governor still have even though they're spending billions of dollars a year to deal with mental health and homelessness, they have zero ability to get a coherent plan that actually works together to help these people, other than just, hey, let's arrest them for 4 hours and throw them back out on the street. And guess what they're going to do? Go down to another subway platform. This thing, it's stupid. It's more of the same. It's doubling down on failure. Let's go further let's go further into this video.
Unruly street vending, public urination, abandoned vehicles. It gives the impression of an unsafe community. So today, I am announcing the planned overhaul of the NYPD's approach to quality of life enforcement. For too long, we asked our cops to correct these conditions without sufficient direction. No more. Our plan, which will be finalized and implemented over the coming months, begins with the creation of the Quality of Life Division, headed by a new chief of citywide quality of life. Department-wide units that were responsible for this enforcement will be centralized under this new command, and officers in precincts will be assigned to newly formed Q teams to specifically respond to these issues. At the same time, we're developing QStat, which will track quality of life complaints, the same way that CompStat tracks crime complaints. As Mayor Adams often says, you have to inspect what you expect, or else it's all suspect. Sounds better when he says it. These QStat meetings will bring our quality of life work into much greater focus, more accurately measure our effectiveness, and recenter our approach to public safety. Every day, the women and men of the NYPD are working to reduce crime in our neighborhoods and on our subways. Despite the incredible gains they've made, we know we could be doing so much more. And we know what's standing in our way. It's surging recidivism. In 2020, law changes and reforms to the criminal justice system were enacted in New York State. These changes had wide-ranging consequences that skewed focus away from crime victims. Prosecutors were unable to build and present cases, and judges began to reflexively release offenders with no real recourse for their actions. The result is a revolving door that puts repeat offenders back on the streets again and again and again. The system is unsustainable, it defies common sense, and it is crying out for a course correction. We all witnessed the horrific murder of 14-year-old Caleb Rios earlier this month by a chronic recidivist who struggled with significant mental health challenges. Young Caleb was murdered while on his way to school in the Bronx. And speaking to his mother after his death was one of the most painful experiences of my life. It is a tragedy for his family and for our city. But the individual who murdered young Caleb had been previously arrested multiple times for arson, for burglary, possession of a knife, possession of a loaded 9mm gun, criminal mischief, harassment. Some of these charges were as recently as November. This is not a one-off. Recidivism is getting worse in New York City. Compared to 2018, 2024 saw an unacceptable surge in the number of individuals arrested 3 times or more for the same crime in the same year. The increase was 61% for burglary, 64% for shoplifting, 71% for grand larceny, 83% for robbery, 119% for auto theft. And when we look at felony assault, an index crime that was up in 2024, that increase was a staggering 147%. Ask any cop and they will tell you, they'll make an arrest, they'll transport the prisoner down to central booking and go back to their command to finish their paperwork. But before that cop is even done with their regular tour, that perp is back at the precinct to pick up their property and head back out onto the street. It's demoralizing. It's nuts. And it is evidence of a broken system. As the mayor and I have said, the cops are out there doing their jobs. Last year, the NYPD made the most major felony arrests since 1998. But at the same time, we're hitting recidivism milestones that undermine that work and that threaten the communities that our cops work so hard to protect. Compared to 2018, misdemeanors in New York City were up in 2024. At the same time, and for the very same crimes, the rates of decline to prosecute were up 31%, while the rates of bail set were down 54%. Imagine how frustrating and disheartening it is for our cops to arrest the same people for the same crimes in the same neighborhoods over and over. And how scary it is for New Yorkers to see the same person who victimized them one day.
All right, so let's stop here. So she's talking two things here. She's talking about recidivism, but she also said that they're creating basically condition teams again, these quality of life initiatives. They're going to once attack again. That is the return to broken windows, but they're creating a quality of life division to do so. So while we're saying, yeah, this is going to be done at a precinct level, we're creating a whole new bureau. So guess what that means? A whole nother 3-star chief for the quality of life division. Plus, she starts to point out and use her bully pulpit to go against, the acts of recidivism and the district attorneys, which, I applaud her for. And this is what the 3 previous police commissioners should have been doing. This is something that we've advocated for her to do. Is actually you can't change the laws, but you could let everybody know what's going on. I think she does that there. Marlon, what do you think about what she had to say about the quality of life teams? What do you think about that? And what do you think about this new division?
Well, it's like I said, the whole tenet of the neighborhood policing model was supposed to be localization. It specifically says in here that the same officers work in the same neighborhoods on the same shifts, increasing their familiarity with local residents and local problems. Now, the problem is when you have who's going to be in charge of all of this? It's going to be a chief in 1PP. That chief has chances are he doesn't have familiarity. Well, he can't because these are going to be zones in multiple parts of the city. So that chief doesn't have familiarity with those neighborhoods himself, right? He probably won't have much interaction with any of the community members and the business owners of that zone. So we already noted that a lot of these cops are going to feel detached from those communities because they haven't been there long enough. It's different from a cop being detailed there for a temporary amount of time, as opposed to a cop coming out of the academy and starting his career in that precinct and spending a couple of years in that precinct. It's different. So the detachment will be there. And now you have a chief in 1PP who's going to have to justify his position, and who's definitely going to push for numbers. Even if he's not explicitly calling it like it used to be, like when they would tell you to go out there and you better come back with 2 250s or 2 Cs for your tour. He's going to be pushing numbers because he has to justify his position. So there's that. So we already see the momentum that's going to be pushed on these cops to go out there and get numbers from a community that they're not familiar with. And in addition to that, how much say will the actual precinct commanders have over those zones and those conditions in general? He probably won't. Okay, which is again a problem because it separates the cops who are doing enforcement in that area from the community itself that's going to be feeling the impact of it. And how can the first this just tosses out the last 10 years of reforms, and how can they effectively do their job if they're detached from the communities that they're going to be enforcing? They're going to be aggressively enforcing crimes in those zones. This is again a return to the excesses of the mid 2000s, the excesses of Operation Impact, and the reforms that came after were a response to that. The BLM riots, the BLM movement, the rise of a generation of kids who were brainwashed into hating the cops was fed from the excesses of that era, and here we are doing it again. Like we have learned nothing from the past.
Sal, what do you got?
I thought crime was down. Crime is down. Jobs are up. The city's not surviving. It's thriving. But we need to put this special unit. You need cops in there. You know, here's another thing. There's two things here with this little part of the speech. So this quality of life unit, whatever we're going to call it, you're right. That's going to need an entire staff. So now, where are you pulling these cops from? Because you're not dismembering. You're not getting rid of the community affairs. We're not getting rid of these scams, the social media unit where 80 cops were there. Where are you taking cops from? That means patrol, right? And the biggest problem with the police department is the mismanagement in personnel. Because I thought Eric Adams said he was going to put everyone out of one police plaza and out into the street, back on patrol. It's the same game. They always do. So now you're going to take from patrol to add this quality of life thing, which basically sounds like a borough meeting. And if you go back in time, we used to have every platoon would have to go down to the borough once every 28 days, and they go over the agendas, whatever it is, what they want coming from police plaza, and then they present numbers. And each lieutenant or captain from each command that's up there in that borough would have to answer for whatever it is that the borough chief or the assistant chief, what they're saying about, I don't like the way your numbers are. That's what this really is. And the second part about this is, I thought there was a community response team. She has not mentioned that once here. She's talking about a quality of life. So are we moving those people in community response team over there? Because remember, I told everyone the reason CRT was created for John Schell, for a purpose of John Schell getting promoted to the chief of patrol and the chief of department, because he can't get promoted. He's got basically a body under his belt that he didn't even have a grand jury for, we're learning. So he got cleared, but he didn't get cleared. That's the reality of what happened. So that's what CRT was created for. I don't hear any mention of this. So is this plan going to be, we're back to condition teams, we're back to crime, which is CRT? I don't know. That part we're not hearing, but I could already tell we're going to be pulling personnel from patrol, which is already short, so that they could stuff them into this unit, which is going to have to be staffed from top to bottom. It's going to be a mess with people being transferred, and that's their answer to everything. We're going to pay Peter by robbing from Paul. That's what you're doing. You're taking away from patrol yet again. So sorry for the men and women that work every day out there, and you can't even go from one job to another because there's nobody out there working with you because you barely have anyone working on your tour. It's about to get worse because we have this quality of life unit that, sir, I don't know. Who are you going to arrest? Because remember, they're declining prosecutions left and right. So it's good she called them out, but at the same time, legislatively, politically, then it's the problem. Legislation is the problem. So I don't know what how do you meet the rubber's meeting the road? What do we do here? We're going to take from patrol. That's unbelievable.
Well, first of all, I have to laugh about her praising Eric Adams about his nomen of, you have to inspect, because if you don't do it properly, it's suspect, whatever line. The only suspect is Eric Adams in this. So I think that's kind of funny. But also, the last thing we need is another bum to make chief and to have a whole nother unit that we need checks and balances for. When we have quality of life conditions that has been going on for years under Giuliani into Bloomberg, it worked in the precinct. Cops that, it to me basically was like the minor leagues. It was like the farm to where cops eventually they went on to become anti-crime cops. That's where you learn to be pressure tested, how to deal with the public, how to identify illegal firearms, dealing with potential subjects, the most violent perpetrators in the city, but having an intimate relationship with that because you're working in the precinct at the precinct level, and your commanding officers are actually strategically deploying those police officers depending on the crime trends in that precinct. But to have this on the to have its own unit, to me, when we say suspect, I suspect that it's another opportunity to have this quasi-mobile field force that could be utilized for other resources as well because they don't have the manpower. So they'll give it a fancy name saying it's a unit to address quality of life, but when necessary, they could use it to address protest. When necessary, they could use it to address a traffic condition or some other potential of heightened prolific incident because they don't have the manpower. So to create a new unit to say this is going to address quality of life allows them to use this unit for other purposes. And that's the way I see it. So yes, could it be robbing from Peter to pay Paul? But that's what I see that they're doing. So they're giving complete distraction and deflection, saying, yeah, this is quality of life. And I'm sure that's what they'll do. They'll have them go out and address quality of life. And I don't think they'll actually address the proper subjects that are actually creating the problems in New York City. But it will be numbers for that. Numbers for numbers, and it will be utilized in different aspects because they don't have the manpower. This is complete deflection. This is more gaslighting. This is just giving things new names, and they'll find some chief that is in the circle of nepotism to put him up and give him this unit, and another bum is going to be, elevated by rocket fuel. This is just trash right here. Complete trash. I'm just glad I'm still awake from this bedtime story.
So I think that if I was in the CRT unit right now, I know Eric put out that they actually had a conference when Jessica Tisch was promoted to police commissioner, and they put up the scene from Wolf of Wall Street. We're not going anywhere. And it was a big rally. Kaz Daughtry, John Shell, all these guys. I think you guys are going somewhere. I think this is a move away from the CRT team. If you remember at the implementation of the CRT team, what their job was going to be was to go after quality of life issues. So considering we are now creating another unit to go after quality of life issues, I'm going to say that maybe those khaki pants are going to be worthless soon. I don't know. I could be wrong about it, but, Sal brought it up too. I'm thinking what I'm hearing is we don't need two units to go after quality of life issues. And it's not being done very well at a borough level. It's not being done very well at a citywide level. So they're going to bring it back to a precinct level. But like Marlon said, now you're going to have this bureau that's unaccountable to the police precinct. They're going to have their own agenda that's different from the police precinct. They don't understand the nuances that are going on in that specific precinct. So it's complete detachment. It's going to be a numbers game. Again, more doubling down on the failures of broken windows, not the stuff that we need to be highlighting that was positive from broken windows. And that's what we're seeing. The stuff when we did Eric, Edwin Raymond is a big proponent against broken windows. But when he spoke and listened, when we spoke and we talked about the successes of broken windows and how it could be implemented properly, he actually had no issues with it. And I think if we presented broken windows in a different light, and we really focused on the success of it and not the failures, which this is doing, we would actually all, regardless of where we are politically on the spectrum or where you are, I think it's common sense. It could be a bipartisan position. But this detachement's there. And again, like I said, I'll applaud her for talking about the recidivism, but the people that could work to end the amount of recidivism we're seeing and the amount of declined prosecutions and the amount of holding people without bail, that is a politically created crisis. That is something that Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul should be working with their partners in the district attorney's office and their partners that have been either appointed or elected judges to alleviate that. That's more of a higher level thing. It can't really be done from her level, but she's interjecting herself in the conversation. So I'll give her credit on that. Let's go further into this speech.
Right back in their neighborhood the next. So we will chart a new course, one that reestablishes and reinforces the natural alliance between the police and the public they serve, and one that properly balances the rights of criminal defendants with the safety needs of the general public. I am proud to share that I have been working alongside Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Chauncey Parker and all 5 of our district attorneys to put forward a proposed change to the discovery law that will remove onerous restrictions and irrelevant technicalities that cause far too many cases to be needlessly dismissed and allow dangerous offenders to avoid accountability under the law. I am hopeful that this common sense approach, with the support of the mayor, the deputy mayor, all 5 DAs, and the police commissioner of the city of New York, will see the light of day in Albany. I have also been very clear with some of our district attorneys that their declined prosecution rates, in particular for misdemeanor offenses, are unacceptable and are contributing to the feeling of disorder in this city. One thing that we can do to make our city safer is hire more cops. This is going to be a major focus of our administration, and I am not going to sugarcoat the real recruitment issues that we're facing. In the not so distant past, NYPD applicants used to wait for years to get the call to join the academy. Now, we are practically begging people to take the exam. So what happened? First and foremost, we're still seeing the real impact of the defund and anti-police movements. A lot of the rhetoric aimed at our police is vile, and the pendulum has swung too far away from what I consider to be the most important and noble job anyone could take on. And we need to swing it back. Because it's quite simple. More cops on patrol make our city safer. So along with the mayor, we are working aggressively to get the NYPD's headcount back up to 35,000 officers, starting with a new class of 1,000 recruits I swore in just yesterday. The last time the NYPD hired such a big class was nearly a decade ago. To keep our city safe, we must have the best trained, the best prepared, and the best equipped officers in law enforcement. And we will be doing more work to increase our headcount in the coming months. Policing in New York City may be more complex and technologically advanced than ever before, but at its core, the job remains straightforward. Prevent crime and disorder, uphold the law, keep people safe. To do this, a law enforcement agency needs one thing above all else: the public trust. And it all begins with strong ethical leadership. So immediately upon taking this job and at the mayor's direction, I began a full review of every bureau, division, and unit in the NYPD. We would enhance what was working well and fix what wasn't. I want to be extremely clear about this. In my career, I have set high standards for myself and for those who work with and for me. And I have been very clear with all members of my executive team that I expect them to rise to meet these very high standards. Over the past 10 weeks, we've made nearly a dozen changes to our top leadership, matching the right skills and the right experience with the right roles. We did an overhaul of the Internal Affairs Bureau, both in leadership and personnel. We returned about 1,000 cops from administrative roles back to patrol. We initiated system-wide changes to our overtime policies, also at the mayor's direction, designed to prevent misuse and to ensure compliance with NYPD and city regulations. And we amended the NYPD's vehicle pursuit policy to give our officers clearer guidance and smarter protocols. The advanced tools of modern-day policing make it possible to apprehend criminals more safely and effectively than ever before, and early results have shown a 66% decrease in the number of vehicle pursuits over the past 2 weeks.
All right, let's stop it right there because that was a lot. So one, they're bringing up this this change to the discovery policy, the discovery reform bill. Discovery reform was Jack, do me a favor, get the comments off right now. So one, they're bringing a change to the discovery reform bill. So that's something that I think we should talk about. Should the police department be doing that? I guess, in my opinion, they're leading from behind. They're proposing the change. They're seeing the failures at all 5 borough DA's office and how is it affecting. So I like that they're doing that. I like that Chauncey Parker's actually doing something instead of seeing how his LLCs and his security companies could profit off of contracts, both in the MTA and migrant contracts. So I kind of like that bill. Then she goes into all of the sweeping overhaul changes, which is the revamping of the Internal Affairs Bureau. But like we said, it's playing musical chairs. It's all the same faces. It's all nonsense. It's all the same. And we'll get into that later, and we could talk about that at another episode. But then she goes further into the vehicle pursuits. The vehicle pursuits down 67%. So there's a lot to get into here. Marlon, what are you thinking about all these things?
Yeah, you're right. There is a lot to go into here, but I just want to focus on you mentioned about the recruitment problems they're having. You said a couple days ago in the I think it was Tuesday's video, maybe no Mondays, about the staffing crisis and how it's going to lead to a competency crisis in the city. And I agree 100%. And I think in a lot of ways you're seeing that in society as a whole. You saw half of LA get burned down basically because of the incompetency of their local government and their inability to do what they should have been doing, which is clearing the brush and doing maintenance. And you're going to see that in the NYPD. If not, you're already seeing it because we've already talked about how Kaz and Chell are shouldn't be up there, But the staffing crisis is going to cause that problem to balloon even more because the in a lot of ways the NYPD has normalized the brain drain of experienced personnel. And the more that happens is the less experienced personnel to make autonomous decisions you're going to have there. And you're seeing I have this feeling that the department's reliance on AI is going to become even bigger as time goes on, because you're going to keep hiring the rookies as veterans run out the door. You're going to have to keep hiring rookies, and the job is going to become younger and more experienced, and it's going to have to rely on the AI to tell them things where an experienced cop especially from our generation and the generations prior would know how to do, because not only do they have the life experience, but they have the time on the job to know what to do. So this goes back to the department having centralized all of decision making at the top. And what you're seeing now is that's happening even more. And has that benefited the job? You look at the crime rates, you look at violent crime, which Sam Antar has already pointed out has gone up tremendously since Adams has been there. Has the continued centralization of decision making at the top helped the job? No, it's hurt it. Okay. Now you're getting. When I was on patrol, I hated the boss coming to my job. It's my job. I wanted to close. I'll handle my job. I'll close it out, and I'll give a code to Central and move on to the next job. I hated when bosses would show up to my job and kind of take over and kind of micromanage the job. But that seems to be the way things run now. When I went out to the precinct to backfill on COVID, I noticed bosses would show up to every job. And I noticed, like rookies, a lot of these young guys would wait until the boss comes to make a decision, okay? Which is something that's unheard of for prior generations. But what you're seeing now with the staffing crisis and with the normalization of the brain drain is happening, and it's going to continue happening, and it's going to lead to that competency crisis that you mentioned.
Sal, what do you think, brother?
They definitely have a problem in recruiting for hires. That's no secret. So then what does that mean? Because I heard her say we're going to have a big push. So then are we going to get a bunch of, let's call it what it is. Are there going to be a bunch of DEI hires here? Because how do you just rush through and put what? We need thousands of cops, so we're just going to hire anyone and everyone. See, at least in our day, they were very stringent. I mean, there were people waiting. They were on lists of exams, and people took 6 months, a year, 2 years, and they couldn't even get into the NYPD because they couldn't get past that one point because they were really vetting people. So here, well, you're going to let everyone in, and then guess what? A lot of those people come on and go, I don't want to have part of this, and they leave. They do 6 months of the academy. You're spending all this money training someone to become a police officer who then quits not too far after that, or maybe like in a year. So, and these are things that occur a lot. So recruiting, it's terrible. It's not just the New York City Police Department. It's every municipality in New York City. They can't even get commissioner roles in other agencies. Nobody wants it. Then it's up there vacant. You could go on LinkedIn and you'll see for yourself. So that's is a big issue. And again, she's talking about this unit and all this stuff. It's like, look, we already have what we have, right? So they're making this new unit, and I just feel like you're pulling from patrol. I'm just hearing the same things over and over again. I don't know, how is this beneficial for the police department? Which, by the way, she says in that whole thing that you put up, the bullet points, we're going to call that the Lieutenant Epps effect, because all of that happened because of litigation that's occurring right now. And it's going to be a big problem. They're just transferring this guy for that guy, and then they end up back where they were. So internal affairs is being revamped, right? And we're transferring people around, and we're trying to not look so corrupt. But yet the chief of personnel is still there. John Schell is still there. This Rivera, chief of patrol, he's still there. These are guys that that were corrupt or associating with criminals, and they're still there. So I don't know what that means. It's just a ruse yet again, because that's what she's really good at. If there's anything, she's being a good lapdog for New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who is trying to mask all this stuff. And really, Kaz Dordry runs the show. So, again, no one is being held accountable for anything they're doing in the New York City Police Department, except for the poor cop that walks in and wore white socks that day and forgot, and then is getting a CD for it. Like that's what's going on in the New York City Police Department.
Sal, you nailed it right there. When you keyword, you said she's masking the real issues. And what's going on here is quite interesting, that she is deflecting and distracting and giving the idea that it's just some minor infractions that need to be addressed. When she talks about overtime policies, we created this overtime system to make sure that there's not abuse of overtime when we already had checks and balances in place, but there's an epic fail on the leadership. And we're not talking about infractions. We're talking about appearance of impropriety that includes a corruption probe. We're talking about an actual corruption probe. That's why we need extreme change of leadership, not because of small infractions. So this is just complete deflection. And again, it shows an epic fail. And you're right, Sal. She's a lapdog. She's a puppet, as you say, for Eric Adams. And I say she's a patsy because when things go down, she's going to take the blame because she's the one that's actually putting out this information, and it's in her speech. And then she goes on to say, we corrected the issues with vehicle pursuits. It's kind of ironic, and it's a paradox when you're saying you corrected the issues of vehicle pursuits, but yet the person responsible, the leadership responsible for the epic fail of vehicle pursuits that create all this damage and including death in New York City for citizens because of these vehicle pursuits, is the same person that you made the chief of the department, John Schell. That I find is a complete paradox.
Yeah, I mean, all this is it's a joke. So, I mean, I like the discovery law. I'm not going to lie. That's the deputy mayor of public safety, right? So that guy's not focused on his security companies and utilizing his position to move the money in New York City into his own pockets and his friends' own pockets. So I like that. Staffing, she's saying we're going to staff. How? How? I haven't heard one thing in this whole speech. How you're going to stop people from leaving? How you're going to stop experience from walking out the door? How you're going to recruit new talent and experienced talent? I haven't heard one idea other than, yeah, we're just going to do that. The staffing crisis continues. 100% Marlon. With the staffing leads to the incompetency. The overhaul is smoke and mirrors, like we said. That is complete. That's a complete joke. It's all smoke and mirrors. It was moves to pretend like we've done something. And 100%, Eric, the vehicle pursuits. We're talking about vehicle pursuits, but the person that made vehicle pursuits as a chief of patrol increased 600%, is now the chief of department, and he's responsible for the decrease in vehicle pursuits. What are we talking about here? He was the one that came after us for saying that it was a terrible policy, that we never utilized the door and broken windows, that it's going to lead to innocent lives being killed. It's actually more of a danger to public safety. It actually prohibits public safety. It endangers the public. It endangers innocent life, and it does zero to bring down crime because of the lack of prosecution and the lack of and the lack of actually holding people accountable for their actions. So, other than the discovery law thing, and that is not really a police department thing, I think I'm hearing just gibberish. It's complete gibberish. Let's go a little further into this.
Making our city streets safe for the public and the police. Perhaps you've caught on that I am a no-nonsense, data-driven, results-oriented person who has always been willing to do the hard work of finding precise, tailored answers to difficult questions. My standards are high for this department, and my expectations are even higher. This is the energy that the mayor brought to City Hall with the directive to get stuff done. It's the mindset I bring to leading the greatest police department in the world. And it is the heroic pursuit of every single member of the NYPD. I believe deeply in the nobility of policing because I have seen the work your officers do up close and personal. It is my honor and the greatest privilege of my life to now be able to guide them, to take care of them, to support them, and yes, to fight like hell for them, because they are the reason why the state of policing in New York City is strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tisch. And it's now my pleasure to introduce the President and CEO of the New York City Police Foundation, Susan Birnbaum.
Okay, wow. Just so everyone knows, that's 9 weeks. 9 weeks, and we have all this. So we are inspired, and we have so much to look forward to. So thank you, Commissioner. It's an honor to be here today to hear your vision for the NYPD in New York City. And we're also honored to have Governor Kathy Hochul and Mayor Eric Adams here today. Thank you. We have every confidence in you, Commissioner, and the members of the police department who are working tirelessly to keep us all safe. The Police Foundation could not support the efforts of the NYPD.
All right, we don't need to hear that. I think we're good. We don't need to hear any more of this. This is it. So this was it. Let's start to do a little recap on this. Marlon, what are your overall thoughts? State of the NYPD. What do you say state of the NYPD is currently 2025?
I say one of the problems we talked about in the past of having somebody inexperienced in the NYPD is that who is she taking advice from? She's only as good as the people around her. Now we're seeing rumors that the people around her are holdovers or leftovers from prior administrations, in particular Ray Kelly, and you're seeing that reflected in her policy now. And it's like Sal mentioned, we need to, no disrespect to any of those prior commissioners. They're both significant figures in the history of New York City and the history of policing in the United States. So no one could ever take that away from them, But there comes a time when we have to move past that and take what worked then and move forward with new ideas. instead of what's seems to be happening here is retreading old ideas that failed and slapping on talking points or buzzwords at the end of it, like AI, and thinking that that is going to be the solution. You know, AI isn't going to make up for the problems that we've had with Operation Impact. Yeah, the exact problem we had with Operation Impact is that a lot of the decision making was centralized at the top. Precinct commanders had a lot of the decision making for directing that personnel removed from them. You had personnel that were unfamiliar with a lot of the locations they were working and thus were detached from it. Okay, so here we see the same ingredients coming together that created that boiling pot. Okay, and creating the problems that we saw afterwards. And here we see them coming together again in that same stew, and we're repeating again the problems of the past rather than taking the lessons learned from that and moving on with some new energy and some new fresh ideas. So again, this is I see this as a retread, and I can't see how it's going to work as presented to us right now.
I second your thoughts. I think you're right. I didn't hear, like I said in the beginning, I don't hear anything there that's riveting or, it's just the same ideas. She's clearly being advised by this guy Burke, who was a retread on the Ray Kelly himself, and Bill Bratton. And, we can't, as a society, you could always go back in time. Like, I'm sure President Trump says, oh, Ronald Reagan, that was a good time. But you can't use the Ronald Reagan model. You could use some of those things, but today is 2025, not 1985. Soviet Union was around back then, isn't here. That doesn't exist today. So you could take certain ideas and try to apply them here. But again, even John's pointed this out. I think we're taking the bad aspects of broken windows and applying them here. Because again, arresting and where there's a situation that's not going to work in 2025, especially with decline prosecutions at a skyrocket right now with this transit blitz of let's find the homeless person. See, it was designed to be almost like a precision, like you got to be like very precise policing and using broken windows. That's how it would work. It works. Intrusive policing, Eric says it all the time. I agree with that. But it's a different day and age. And the way it's being applied now is at its absolute worst. In fact, it's going to probably be worse than the past. And there'll be litigation for years and years and years. And I'll just say this, if you're out in the street, be very aware of what you're doing and who's telling you to do what, because in the end, they're going to put the whole thing on you. Your training, what did we tell you? It's not what we say. It's what the patrol guide says. So be very cognizant of this, because they don't care whose head they hang on a mantle, whose head they put up on the wall if something goes wrong. It's all about perception management. That's all Eric Adams has ever been in the business in. And he plays with your emotions because he's the swagger man. He loves low information. The guy's looking to stay out of prison right now. I don't know if he gets that. I have no idea. There's a lot of rumors about today, tomorrow, the next day after that. So just be cognizant if you're that poor cop or that poor sergeant or lieutenant that's going into work right now. Be cognizant of what I'm saying, because it'll fall back on you if something goes wrong, and then they're going to pin it on you and say, well, you're training. This doesn't say. It's the same stuff from the past. That's all I'm saying. It's regurgitating something that had a few good aspects, but overall didn't really work. What are the lasting effects of it? Because there's plenty of litigation that occurred from that day and is still ongoing today.
Well, you can take that speech and you can put it in the fiction section, the children's section of the library, because that's exactly what it is. But what she did was pretty smart and intelligent. And I think collectively we actually debunked and we dived deep into the layers of this speech, right? And it's exactly what I said, right? Our friends and listeners, they see it too. We see the comments here. What happened in the beginning is complete deflection, and it's also honoring the police foundation, and she sandwiched it at the end by honoring the police foundation again. But in the middle of the speech was actually the meat and potatoes of this address and the state of the NYPD. And again, she took some truths and turned it into a lie. Let's for instance, let me give you an example. So she said in 2005 there was a large class, and that large class has now met the eligibility to retire. Now that is true. That was a large class. They are eligible to retire. That is also true. But what is a lie? The lie right there is that is the reason emanating and causing this mass exodus, and also an indication why the numbers are not where they need to be. So that's where the lie is. So she took some truths and turned to a lie. She also said that they need to make some leadership changes. Now that is true, but where is the lie that they actually corrected them and addressed it? Because we don't see them being properly suspended. We don't see it being addressed. Jeffrey Maddrey was not addressed properly. The only reason Jeffrey Maddrey was suspended is because of a federal raid. And if it wasn't for that corruption probe, Jeffrey Maddrey would be in full retirement and would not face any discipline. So again, she took some things that are true and turned it into a lie. So if you look in the middle of that speech, it's pure gaslighting and it's actual lying to the public. So Sal, I have to say, you're 100% right. When she's the lapdog, she's exactly that. So it's extremely intelligent by Eric Adams, which I think that Eric Adams and his people, and along with Kathy Hochul, influenced a lot of the speech to where praising Eric Adams, praising Kathy Hochul. I'm not surprised after this speech if the union goes and writes Kathy Hochul another $50,000 check after this speech, but completely honoring them, right? And that's what she did, because it's smart by Eric Adams. Eric Adams could say, you know what, when this becomes an epic fail, Jessica Tisch is the police commissioner. I didn't tell her to say that. And we know that's what Eric Adams would do. So again, I'm going to say that she took the truth and turned it into a lie.
Yeah, so I think it was all fluff. I think it was a waste of money. I hope the police foundation paid for it, and all the rich bureaucrats that paid for that dinner. I hope it wasn't New York City taxpayers, but I'm sure it was, because I think it was a complete waste. I think if the state of the NYPD was what they say the state of the NYPD is, we wouldn't need to point it out. This is my version of what the state of the NYPD is. If you look right here at the guy right here, that's here. That's it. This is the NYPD. You're losing experienced, talented, they're demoralized, they're bruised and battered. They're sick of everything that's been going on, both politically, the anti-police rhetoric out there in the world that has now shifted to the pro-police rhetoric by way of every politician, including the far left. So it's laughable. It's been fun to watch, but these people are completely sick of it. But that's not why they're leaving the job. And that's the thing that they haven't honed in at all on this issue. The reason that police are leaving the job is the internal pressures of the NYPD. And literally, this whole entire state of the NYPD, whatever we want to call it, has done absolutely nothing to alleviate the internal pressures for the members of the NYPD. It's all fluff and mirrors. This is not going to do all of the things. It's just more reshuffling the deck, more nonsense. Like, oh, now we got a new unit. Oh, look, now we got a union unit. Oh, now we got more of the same training, but we renamed it. Oh, look at this. And oh, by the way, we're still all getting shuffled around, moved down on trains, being able to being told that the cops are fine and morale's fine and the locker room's good and all this other stuff. And it's all a bunch of garbage. And these people are going to continue to be overworked, continue to do unhealthy amounts of overtime, and be demonized for every single thing. And they've done absolutely nothing to alleviate the internal pressures, nothing to attract new recruits, nothing to attract new talent. And honestly, there's not the only idea that I saw that came out of the box, and it didn't even come out of the box. It came out of this podcast, was one, using her bully pulpit to go after the judges and the DAs, right? Not by calling them out specifically, but letting people know exactly what's going on, right? So she used her bully pulpit for that. And the other thing that was innovative that came out here is actually drafting legislation that would help alleviate the issues that the rank and file are facing when presenting these cases, when the detectives are working on cases to get these cases drawn up and not get them thrown out by way of the discovery law, which was created and built to do exactly that. So, I mean, to me, it's a complete joke.
Something, John, just before you go, I want to say one thing, but you're right. She's using a bully pulpit, but she's a unique person because her family has contributed to many people that are in the legislative branch right now, whether it be at the state assembly, the state senate, and in city council, including the governor, who's a very good friend of hers. So she is in a completely different position because before she starts saying, oh, didn't you put like 20,000 into this person's account and another 10? That's her family. So just put that into context when you think she's sitting there pointing fingers. But your family is a problem that's contributing to that by paying for this stuff because you donate to these people that hate cops. So, 1 minute she's saying, oh, I'm for the cops, and the next minute, but your family's giving X amount of dollars to the politicians that hate us. So just want to point that one out.
Yeah, I think it's good you pointed out. I think that's the theme. If you really drill down on this speech, and that's what came to my head, the theme of this speech is turn the truth into a lie, and that's what she did. If you actually go to the speech, that's intelligent, right? She told you that they're going to have more training to de-escalate. Now that's the truth. You can never have enough training. But where the lie is that the cops need more tactics when it comes to EDPs, emotionally disturbed persons, because the NYPD is the best in the business when it comes to that. Was there a problem with overtime? Yes. That's the truth. But she tells you, where's the lie? That they came up with a new plan. They're utilizing the same plan that they already had. The same plan that's in place. We lost John? Was that? But
I think so. Maybe he's I don't know.
But I guess we'll figure it out. I don't know. Jack, see if we can pick John back up. But anyway, we lost. The bottom line is we're lying, right? That's the truth. The truth is there was an overtime plan in place, but it was misused, and it's because it's corrupt. There's corruption behind it, and she didn't address it. She made it seem like there's minor infractions, and these minor infractions have been addressed. Everything we've seen is basically the same thing. That's why I use this expression, and I'll say it again. It's the same horse in different color. And that's what we have here. Marlon, you identified some great points when we talk about it being completely galvanized. And that's what's happening, right? These are layers that she put in this speech to protect the real issues. Again, any of our friends and listeners, go back to that speech and watch the beginning. This is all calculated. It's complete deflection. It's to divert your attention to really what's going on. The state of the NYPD address what was in the middle of that speech. And what was in the middle of that speech is the truth that was turned into a lie. That's the ultimate theme. Marlon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. And in fact, they do this a lot. In fact, Chell, if I recall correctly, Chell was the last one I saw. I think maybe Shepard did this too, but they all do this in general. Whenever they get asked tough questions, they like to include in their answer about the hard work of officers, and nobody asks you about them. Okay, we all know the boots on the ground are working their best to keep the city together. It's not about them, it's about you. When we ask the questions about the policy failures, we're asking management. We're not talking about the cops on the street, but they always mention the cops on the street to deflect about the real issue and deflect that question. And Chell, I remember Chell saying this in response to a question about morale in I think it must have been early March maybe of 2024. But he said morale is fine, the unions are okay with what we're doing, and the cops on the street and the detectives are holding the city together. They like to throw that in that about the hard work of cops. And in fact, Chell also used this tactic when he was being criticized by reporters when he was going on his tirade on social media. He wanted to conflate. This is how they try and conflate of them with criticism of cops on the ground. You see, by including about the hard work of cops in there, they kind of want to make it so that you're not going to criticize them further. You're not going to ask them tough follow-up questions, and you're not going to dig further. And if you do, why are you why are you coming down on our hardworking men and women on the ground? Okay, why are you criticizing cops? No, nobody's criticizing cops. We're criticizing the problem, and the problem is the leadership. The problem is 1PP, and the problem is the incompetence that comes from the top that's making policing hard for the men and women on the ground.
That's right, Marlon. And you know what, Marlon? I think the bottom line is, and I think we all collectively came to the agreement that they turn the truth into a lie constantly. That's a theme, right? And not give the truth to the information, just complete deflect. And what does it tell us? All right. It's kind of disheartening at this point, right? Because we've done such a great effort here, being the squeaky wheel that gets the oil, along with our friends and listeners here, pounding the pavement, talk about the leadership, the corruption that's going on, and nothing has changed. And ultimately, still the upper echelon is not held accountable because John Shell is responsible for this damage that emanated from these vehicle pursuits, and he's promoted to the chief of the department. Kaz Daughtry is part of this unprofessionalism on social media with John Shell as well. And he's still in a place of power within the police department. So not much has changed, if anything. Actually, nothing has changed. It's the same thing, just a different color. So you know what? Let's segue in. Let's talk about Eric Adams, because ultimately, Eric Adams is still the de facto police commissioner. But in my opinion, he distanced himself away from this and yet allowed Jessica Tisch, actually not allowed, permitted her, and definitely promoted for her to propel him and Kathy Holschel while not taking responsibility. Because if this becomes an epic fail, and if anything goes wrong and there's odds with the community when it comes down to broken windows and intrusive police work, it's a great opportunity for Eric Adams to say, well, you know what? I'm not the police commissioner. You know what? I'm not the police. I didn't say that this is a tactic we should use. Jessica Tisch is the police commissioner. And watch that happen. And that's where she becomes the patsy.
Yeah, so guys, thanks for joining us this morning. We just finished up on the state of the NYPD. So if you guys just tuning in, go back and watch it. We've got about 1,200 people on here. So thank you for joining us. Please like, share, subscribe. And yeah, no, I think there's a lot of things with Eric Adams. One, is he going to be the mayor next month is the question I think that everybody wants to get at. Two, absolutely, he's distanced himself from his far left progressive anti-police stances and again, he was the poster boy for the Democratic Party. But Sal, what are you thinking? You gave a pretty good analysis, I thought, of what you're seeing. Apparently there's a subsequent indictment supposed to come down from New York City Mayor Eric Adams. We also reading reports that the DOJ is interfering with the Southern District, asking them to drop the charges against Eric Adams. Rumors of him resigning. He comes out yesterday saying, I'm absolutely not resigning. What are your thoughts around Eric Adams?
Yeah, so I'm actually covered this on my own show you're going to see today. But here's something I'm going to point out. One thing is we saw something. There was a sealed document. The DOJ actually said there was a document in that hearing they had, which is a classified document. It's a classified hearing as it is for a document. So they are moving forward. I don't know what rumor where, because look, in the crux of what happened there, no one's actually, you have to read what's going on. When an incoming president, a new president takes over, of course, the DOJ, those people that he has or Trump has around him are going to call all these districts, we'll say, so Southern District, Eastern, and find out what's going on there. What are the cases? This is a common practice. Now, you're saying he's going to interfere in something. I'm going to tell you this, and I actually covered this on my own show. So what we learned due to my own case was that my attorney, Eric Sanders, filed a letter with the court saying he's now going to reconvene in the cases because he had jury duty. And then, as everyone knows, he's also Lieutenant Epps' attorney. So he put in this letter that it is now known that the Southern District of New York intervened in that case. And subsequently, you saw the raids that were conducted. And Eric Sanders had to work on this entire situation for over 8 hours a day for at least 3 weeks to a month consecutively. That's what's in that letter. And it also states that this is in regards to the executive management in NYPD and the office of the mayor. So now that is another investigation you're learning about for the first time. If you haven't, look on my X feed. I'll cover it in my own show. This document exists. It happened. It's true. So you now know if you could read between the lines, Epps is involved in the Southern District of New York case against Jeffrey Maddrey, and there are elements of not only the upper echelon in that case of the NYPD, but the mayor's office. So, Eric, I don't know how, Eric, you could say, we're going to drop these charges and forget about this because it's sprawling, including this new investigation, which is it's a quid pro quo sexual harassment case. You can't just pardon people. Eric, we have learned is what's going on is that there was a threatening the witness, tampering with witnesses. It's on tape, apparently. This is another charge that they're coming up with Eric Adams. And then I am understanding now, and I haven't said this publicly, that there's at least, I believe, 15 to 20 nightclubs in that extortion thing that, remember, everyone forgot about with the Cabans. It's 15 to 20 of them, and they've already testified at court. I don't know how you drop a case when there's people that are testifying in grand jury. They've become witnesses. They've pled guilty. There would be such a legal quagmire. It would just, my brain is melting thinking about it. I don't see this going away. And his actions show someone who's politically trying to survive. I don't know if he will. I don't know if he doesn't. I don't know if you're going to pardon him. And then there's 50 other charges coming from 50 different other things. I saw Latina Brown put something up, something like that on one of her posts. It makes sense, but it's not concrete. I can only say this. I'm looking at this and many other attorneys I know, some that may have cases against Eric Adams. They don't see how this guy could be cases dropped or pardoned when it would affect everything like an accordion. You will watch everything crumble. And then that would be saying on the flip side, well, then, as much as we like President Trump, you would be known as the president of corruption because you're pardoning one guy. And it's almost the same as if we'll take a police instance. All of us stop someone in the street for drinking, right? We go over to him. And as this is happening, he has an accomplice with him that's got a one of those knives or something, gravity knives. He turns around and tells this guy, he's threatening this person and saying, don't you dare tell him about whatever. And we're all cops hearing this. So we're going to charge both of these guys with whatever it is that we find after this. And then someone says, well, the guy you stopped originally with the beer, we're going to not charge him, but all his friends and everyone that he gave us, they're all going to go down. You would have so many jury nullifications in all those cases. It would stink, and the American public would turn on you in an instant, and that would be a disgrace. So I don't know what Trump's going to do, but I just don't see him trying to get involved in him. This is a mess. It's a quagmire. It's really stay out of it and let it play out.
Maul, what do you think, bro?
Well, so to touch on the state of the NYPD just one last time, that speech was given in front of major donors, right? Major donors and major real estate owners. We're talking billionaires who own properties that the prices are untouchable for ordinary people, right? So the foundation itself was created in the 1970s along with the ABNY as a way to save the city, because these same real estate owners in the 70s saw that the city was losing businesses. At one point, they lost 94 corporations, and in that same period, only 4 new corporations had come. So they saw the migration of people and businesses, and they wanted to have a greater influence on government. Because government at that time the city's government at that time had effectively gone broke, and through malfeasance, financial malfeasance, and fiscal irresponsibility. Ironically, a lot of the same conditions that are here today. So I bring that up because at some point, right, these people are being gaslit, right? At some point, they've got to see their net worth, their businesses declining. They've got to see the lower movement of people into their businesses, which a lot of their businesses are hotels, which depend upon people visiting New York and tourism thriving, right? At some point, they've got to be angry about the way the situation is moving. So for Trump to pardon Eric Adams, and Trump is getting pressured by a lot of these same real estate owners, right? Who have
Yes.
influence in his had influence in his campaign, and now even are part of his administration. But there's gonna come. I can't see how he would pardon Eric Adams, and though those real estate investors are going to be happy with the performance of the city, because the longer Eric Adams stays there, the more damage he's ultimately going to cause to their businesses, because the less people are going to come to New York, the less prominence New York is going to have, and the greater those conditions that are similar to when the ABNY and the Police Foundation were established in the beginning in the 1970s return. So again, it's a bad look for Trump, and I think it's going to just invite more problems on his end. Not only what Sal mentioned before, but when you look at when you just look at like the finances that cascade down from Eric Adams' policy failures. So it's a bad idea, and I hope whoever's advising him, I hope they tell him, listen, you got to stay away from this guy. This guy is political poison, and it's the longer we play ball with him, it's the worse it's going to look upon us, and history will look upon us when the full scope of the financial problems in New York City are finally revealed.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Marlon. You talk about the financial problems, right? So if we actually move away from this corruption probe and pretend, let's play pretend right now. Let's pretend that Eric Adams was never under suspicion in his political career. Let's pretend that Eric Adams is not under a corruption probe. Let's pretend that doesn't exist. At this point, we see a failed administration, failed leadership by Eric Adams, failed policies, because not only that, we don't even know what his policies are. And under Eric Adams, if we excuse and we forget about corruption, we see a sheriff's office ran by Eric Adams that has violated the U.S. Constitution. We're talking about serving the public under the U.S. Constitution. The sheriff's office has done warrantless searches and violated the Constitution. So this is failed leadership. So to hear Jessica Tisch talk about the Honorable Eric Adams and to honor Kathy Hochul, another failed politician, to me is just completely disgusting. It's more of the same. Here's another placeholder of a police commissioner. The only difference is she gives a sexy story and could speak in an eloquent tongue. She has a silver tongue and give you a bedtime story, because that's exactly what it is. We should put everything she said to bed, because it's the same thing we've seen before. And yes, just like Sal said earlier, Sal, you said earlier, some of these policies, they were good in the past. But we have to evolve. We have to take what works and move on. And what didn't work is what she's saying right now. This is why it rings a red flag when she talks about data-driven. The NYPD has been data-driven since the era of Comstat. And Comstat, as great as it is, has been misused and misutilized to create this numbers game. And just like John said earlier in the episode, which is exactly right, this pressure to push down numbers caused the police department to be at odds with the community. It wasn't the rank and file that made the determination that I need to go out and do more stop, question, and frisk interactions with the public. It was the pressure from what I said earlier, the median. And the median is those commanding officers that put the pressure on these cops because they're serving their upper echelon while putting the pressure on the police officers to have a great idea, a great tactic, a great crime fighting strategy of utilizing the case of People versus DeBoer, which is intrusive police work, and also Terry versus Ohio, to have these interactions with the community. But when you put a number on that, you get to this point and you put odds with the community, and that's what's going to happen. So Jessica Tisch, she's tarnishing her name by propelling Eric Adams and putting herself in this position where she's taken the truth and turned it into a lie.
They're muted.
John, your mic.
The mic.
Oh, I said, I think that's enough for today. I think we covered state of the NYPD. It's in shambles. State of Eric Adams. He's hanging on for dear life. We don't know what's going to happen to him. I'm going to say right now, I don't see any way he wins an election. He has zero base other than a bunch of real estate moguls and some corrupt New York City politicians New York state politicians that want him to stay in. He lost his entire base. I don't see any way he lasts. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say, listen, of course, look forward, friends and listeners, on Fridays. We intend to do a roundtable with, of course, the Sal Greco show, Marlon Bethel, brains behind the operation, and John and myself, and try to do a wrap-up for the week. I want to thank our friends and listeners. The content and the comments is fantastic. You pose a lot of questions. We didn't read all the comments, because this would take 5 hours, but really appreciate the input. And Ron Lace, I just want to address what you said. You said you agree that CompStat, they did put pressure on CompStat. If you listen back what I said I think CompStat is a fantastic tool, but not always utilized properly. It serves a great purpose. It really does hold the precincts accountable, and it's exactly that where we have that zone policing. But again, it's more of the same. The truth turned into a lie. But thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back Monday, of course. As always, I want everybody to have a great weekend. This is the think tank. Let's keep moving and building this network together. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. And it's the only way that we're going to have to make a change. Because at this point, there has been no change. There has been no change. The leadership is still not held accountable for the mistakes that they have. To say that there is an overtime plan created and administered to oversee any potential problems is just an outright lie, and showing that your first deputy commissioner, Tanya Kinsella, is not going to be held accountable when she already testified to city council about checks and balances. But there you go. We identified it. We peeled apart the layers. So please, if you have the opportunity, watch that speech again and see if you agree with John, myself, Sal Marlon, and put your own spin on it and put your thoughts to it. As always, thank you, everyone. I appreciate. Sal, would you like to give any thoughts on this?
I actually want to point something out. There was an article that just came out, and it says rodents apparently gnaw through dense rat-proof trash bin mandated by New York City. A wonderful move by Jessica Tisch and Eric Adams, apparently. So that's the real dream team, folks. Add that to the full dream team of Kaz Dawdry, John Schell, and Eddie Caban, and all these other people. I see some of the trolls well, I'm not going to call them trolls, low information people in the comments. You all want to, you guys live in Florida. Hey, we are actually shining a light on the problem that you guys in New York City are paying for. So you want to sit there and say you disgruntled cop, whatever stupid thing you said. You're the low information people voting for that. So look at yourself in the mirror and say, who's the problem? John, Eric, Marlon, or myself, or me that voted for this? Because that's what you're looking at. Just look at this waste of money with this bin. I mean, this is wild. I'll have my show up in an hour or two. Is it 11 almost? At 12:05, I'll be covering some of these topics. I'll get into the letter with Lieutenant Epson, why Eric Adams, why he shouldn't be part. I mean, I don't see it happening because it'd be crazy. It would affect a ton of other cases and also other topics we didn't even get to here because we were just covering the state of the NYPD. So thank you all. We'll do this every Friday. We'll have a roundup. We'll be discussing what's going on, whatever is important. We thought this was important for the week because obviously covers the state of the NYPD, and it's just another dog and pony show and gaslighting and more perception management as always. So thank you for having me here. Thanks for the comments, even the low information people. We're just trying to inform you all.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, for joining. We'll see you. Find us Unfiltered. We'll be back at you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community, but who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, You can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901 Blue. That's 888-901 Blue.